Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Fairy Tale. Start to capture the Fairy Queen Erza. Chapter 61. One day later, early in the morning. You ask me who is the strongest magister in Fairy Tale. Yen, who was looking for tasks in front of the task board, turned around to look after hearing Gray's question. We really want to know who is the strongest member of this guild. Gray and Leon looked at each other, their eyes looking at Egwene were full of little sparkling stars. The strongest magister in Fairy Tale is not in this guild now. You can't see it under normal circumstances. After finishing speaking, Yen picked up a quest and turned to leave. The moment Yen passed by Gray and Leon, she suddenly thinking of something, he smiled and said, "Speaking of which, you have seen it yesterday." After Yen finished speaking with a smile, she left the Fairy Tale Guild. Fairy Tale's strongest magister isn't in the guild. Did we meet yesterday? I can't remember it at all. Gray and Leon glanced at each other, and the two got an important piece of information. Then they turned to other people. Say the words of the strongest magister in Fairy Tale. Then it must be between Egwene and Kildith. But in the end, I'm more optimistic about Kildith's. After Macau poured a jug of wine into his mouth, his face was a little flushed, and because of his dizziness, he spoke words that he didn't quite understand. The strongest magister in Fairy Tale is between Egwene and Kildith. But Egwene is sure that the strongest magister in Fairy Tale is not in the guild, so. Gray and Leon looked at each other, and they had a choice. In the afternoon, when Kildith came to the guild to drink, the two ambushed Kildith. Ice figure tiger, ice-shaped gun. Kildith looked at the ice cube that was attacking him, grabbed it casually, then gently broke it and threw it into his wine glass. Ton. Ah, cool, sure enough, you should add ice cubes to your drink. After drinking the beer with ice cubes, Kildith spoke with a comfortable face. So what's the matter with you guys? Brats. Kildith moved his neck a little, looked at Gray and Leon and asked. Forehead, we want to know who is the strongest magister in the guild. Please tell us. Gray and Leon were surprised to see that the strongest modeling magic of themselves and others turned into ice cubes in other people's cups, and then immediately bowed to Kildith and asked. Senior Macau said that the strongest magister in Fairy Tale is between you and Egwene, so we want to ask you what you think about the strongest magister in Fairy Tale. Leon raised his head and spoke calmly to Kildare. Ha, so it's because of this kind of thing. That guy Yen is a genius. Give him another 10 years. No, maybe in less than 5 years, he can catch up with me now. Kildith sat on his seat, and spoke to Leon and Gray with a smile. Forehead. Leon and Gray shrank their pupils after hearing what Kildith said, and there was a bit of disbelief in their eyes. According to what Kildith said, there is no doubt that Fairy Tale is currently the strongest magister that is. But I'm not the strongest magister in this guild. I advise you two brats not to explore this secret. The strongest magister in Fairy Tale is an out-and-out monster. When Kildith said this, he seemed to think of something, and his body trembled slightly, as if he thought of something terrible in his mind. That was something that made even Kildare's terrified. Forehead. Kildith is not the strongest magister in Fairy Tale. Does this guild still hide a magister stronger than Kildith and Egwene? Gray and Leon looked at each other with shock in their eyes. In short, you two brats, let's focus on your peers. Now you are going to touch that level of magic. It's too early. As Kildith spoke, he drank 3 more glasses of beer in a row before paying the bill, picked up a mission at random, and walked outside the guild. Yes, Kildith didn't pay, because he had no money at all, and all the money he earned was used to pay fines. There's one last person who didn't ask. Gray and Leon looked at each other, and they found the last one, besides Egwene and Kildith, the last and most likely to be called the strongest magister of Fairy Tale, that is Fairy Tale's the president of the tale. Makarov was selected as one of the 10 holy magisters by the Magic Council. However, when they approached Makarov with questions, the answer they got was, "Old man." This old man is no longer Kildith's opponent. Makarov was wearing clothes like a circus clown's costume, and sat on his seat, speaking to Gray and Leon with a smile. But Kildith said that he is not the strongest magister in Fairy Tale. Gray and Leon were completely shocked this time. Yeah, Kildith is indeed not the strongest magister in Fairy Tale. Then here comes the problem. Egwene said that Fairy Tale's strongest magister is often not in the guild. Kildas told you that he is stronger than Egwene, but he is not the strongest magister in fairy tale. And my answer is that Kildas's strength has long surpassed mine. Then please answer now, who is fairy tale, the strongest magister? Let's leave this answer to you to find out for yourself. By the way, let me remind you, pay attention to everyone who enters the guild, the strongest magister in fairy tale may be there. Makarov was sitting on the bar, speaking to Gray and Leon with a smile, but the words he said at the moment were completely childish. Forehead. For a while, Gray and Leon were silent. In the next few days, their eyes kept scanning everyone in the guild. In their eyes, everyone in the guild seemed to be hiding a big secret behind them. However, for several days, the two of them still had nothing to gain from the so-called strongest guild. Until, on the afternoon of the 6th day when Gray, Leon and others joined Fairy Tale. A beautiful woman with long crimson hair and a gorgeous long dress walked into the guild, first smiled at Gray and Leon, then looked at Yen who was constantly looking for quests in front of the quest board, smiled said, "Yen, today is your birthday, let's get together after a long time, but Erza can't wait for dinner." "Irene, if you don't tell me, I will forget." Yen, who was looking for a quest, heard the familiar voice behind her, put down the quest list in her hand, and followed the beautiful lady with long crimson hair. Hee. Before Irene left, she smiled slightly at Makarov and Kildas who were sitting at the bar. Forehead. Gildas, who was drinking, looked at Irene who walked into the guild, and his body froze. He waited until Irene and Yen left, and then quickly took a gulp of beer to suppress his shock. "Who is that beautiful big sister? I seem to have seen it somewhere." Leon and Gray asked Kildas and Makarov after Irene left. "That's Irene, the magister of Fairy Tale, and the mother of Egwene and Erza. She's a real beauty." After hearing the question between Leon and Gray, Makarov sat at the bar and spoke with a smile. Egwene and Erza's mother. Could she be the strongest magister in Fairy Tale? Gray and Leon looked at each other. Then he laughed loudly. "Ha ha ha, no way. Such a good-looking aunt, no matter how she looks, she doesn't look like the monster that Kildas said." Gildas froze when he heard the words, and then he said very sincerely, "Stinky brats. I never said that the strongest magister in Fairy Tale is a monster. Aunt, these two brats are going to be unlucky." After listening to what Gray and Leon said, Makarov, who was looking down at the few people with a smile on his head, thought silently in his heart. Although the little old man doesn't say anything, but the little old man understands everything. On the other side, Irene outside the door twitched her ears slightly, she raised her finger lightly, and a high-level additional magic flew into the guild. "Aunt, I'll punish you guys, and you'll be fine for a week." Irene was in a very happy mood and made an extremely happy decision. "Irene, do you know Gildas?" Yen naturally noticed that Gildas was abnormal after seeing Irene, so she asked. "Well, when you and Erza went to the back mountain for training, I had a little encounter with that idiot." Irene smiled and answered Egwene's question. "Ah, there is a slight intersection." Yen carefully savored the 4 words that Irene said. "It's nothing serious. I just talked to that idiot. I took you to perform S-level missions without my permission as a parent." Irene looked at Yen and explained. "The result?" Egwene asked tentatively. In fact, he probably already guessed the result. "Of course, I'll give him a good meal. It's better for Egwene to keep out of contact with that kind of dubious person. Otherwise, Egwene will easily become that kind of person when she grows up." Irene stroked gently, touching Yen's small head. She asked in a low voice, "Speaking of which, won't Yen become such a person when she grows up?" Egwene. Yen remained silent. At the same time, he remembered something. Now he finally knew why when he happened to meet Gildas on the ice field when he was carrying out the quest against Daliola, the other party was furious. The way he looked, he hit him directly. It turned out that I couldn't beat Irene, so I ran to find him to settle the score. In the guild on the other side. No, my stomach hurts so much I can't stand it. Me too. Gray and Leon in the toilet shed painful tears. Magic Council era. Members of Parliament. The reason why I summoned you here is that everyone should understand why. As for the candidates for the new 10 great magisters, I hope everyone can make a decision before the end of the year. The chairman of the Magic Senate, a fat and wretched middle-aged man, spoke to the members of the House of Representatives in front of him. Candidates for the top 10 Holy Magisters. All of a sudden, the members of the House of Representatives below began to have difficulties. Still as usual, everyone speaks out the recommended candidates, and then we vote to confirm whether they can be selected. The chairman of the Magic Senate yawned. To be honest, the reason why he wanted to settle now was because he was afraid of being forced to work overtime during the Chinese New Year. This bad old man has already booked his leisure time at the end of this year. Does anyone have a suitable recommender? If not, this year will continue as usual, and the quota will be reserved, and we will discuss it next year. The chairman of the Magic Council said that he was planning to postpone the selection of the top 10 magisters. Anyway, the top 10 magisters are not selected every year. Even if one is selected in 3 to 5 years, it is nothing. Moreover, the reason why the Holy 10 is the Holy 10 is because there are only 10 places, and when the places are full, they will not select them. And the reason why the selection of the Holy 10 would give the head of the Magic Council a headache is because the vacancy of the current Holy 10 magisters is too serious. I have a choice. Just then, Yakima raised his hand. Tisk. The chairman of the Magic Council looked at Yajima, who raised his hand, and felt a little uncomfortable. The meeting that was about to be dissolved soon had to continue after Yajima raised his hand. If there are some new members of parliament, the speaker will ignore them directly, but Yajima's seniority is so high. It can be said that among the people who are still alive in the magic world and have not retired, one of the people with the highest seniority. Also known as the old immortal guy. Mr. Yajima, you said. The chairman of the Magic Council, this wretched fellow, smiled at Yajima. That. The people I recommend are still the same as in previous years. It is the member of Fairy Tale of the Magisters Guild, Gildas, who is known as the strongest magister in the west of Ishgar continent. Whether it is strength or the achievements he has made, I think it is completely enough. With hands behind his back, Yakima announced his choice. No, absolutely not. As soon as Yajima finished speaking, he was immediately opposed by others. How can we make a magister with such a low-end character become one of the 10 holy magisters? Everyone, the selection of the Holy 10 should not only be based on strength. Compared with strength, we should pay more attention to character. Do you know what the outside world calls Kildith from Fairy Tale? They all said that Gildas is a magister who has nothing but strength. Those who opposed Yajima had their reasons, and took advantage of Kildas's shortcomings, and directly angered him. As a matter of fact, Kildas's shortcomings are indeed numerous, and the council in front of him still gave Yajima a bit of a slack, and they can tell more about the mistakes that Kildas has made. Oh, if you talk about it in more detail, it seems that you can go directly to the arrest warrant. Cut. Yajima did not expect that Kildas would attract so many opposition from members of parliament, and he immediately shut up about Kildas, because besides Kildas, he has other suitable people who can become the Holy 10 candidates for the Magister. If Gildas can't do it, then I have another candidate. He is a rising star in the magic world. He just joined the Fairy Tale of the Magisters Guild this year, and he has done countless deeds that many people would hardly accomplish in their lifetime. He is Egwene Bel-Celion. It just so happens that Egwene has just completed the 10-year mission to eliminate the terrifying Daliola created by the evil black mage Zirf, who ravaged the continent and wiped out countless towns. It is enough to make him one of the 10 holy magisters. Originally, I planned to let Yen and Kildas be among the holy 10 at the same time, but since you strongly oppose Kildas, I have no choice but to choose Egwene as alone. As Yakima said, he sighed helplessly. He originally planned to compete for 2 spots for Fairy Tale, and then let Makarov have a good time. Now it seems that he can only choose one. No, and Egwene absolutely can't either. Unexpectedly, just after Yajima was selected, he immediately got opposition from other people. Why not? Are you trying to target me? Why do you deny the other when I choose one? Hearing this, Yajima frowned. He felt that these counselors were planning to oppose him and target him. Otherwise, how could someone jump out and vote against him as soon as he had chosen someone? Member Yajima, we are really not targeting you, mainly this Egwene. Yen has shown extraordinary destructive power at such a young age. Did you not see the scene of the battle between Yen and Daliola? It was a mess, the entire village and even the nearby mountains were destroyed. Although there were no more casualties after Yen arrived, but this terrain destructive power. You say, how can we choose him? The counselors looked at each other, and then explained to Yajima bravely. Then who do you think should be chosen? Oh, none of the people I've chosen are good. I said character is more important than strength. Then when Daliola was wreaking havoc on the earth, why didn't you see your so-called good-natured magister go up and stop him? Yes, those with good character and insufficient strength will die. The crusade against Daliola failed, and those who were crushed were all magisters with good morals in your eyes. Yajima's mouth was like a machine gun, and it fired at the judges. After finishing speaking, Yajima took a sip of water, moistened his throat, and then continued to speak. Character. Hehe, I think you all have good character, why don't you do this? In the future, Zarif's demons will continue to wreak havoc on the mainland. When destroying towns, don't go looking for Fairy Tail to attack them, you go on your own, and use your noble character to conquer those demons that eat people and don't spit out their bones. Look at the great demons created by Zarif, will I sit down and calmly talk to you about your shitty personality? The judges' faces were distressed, and they couldn't tell. In fact, the reason why they could hold their heads high and stand on an equal footing in the face of no matter how strong a magister was not because of how strong they were personally, but because of their strength. Controlling a big killer enough to make all magisters awe, magic spirit power, and countless ancient treasure level big killers. Their individual strength, not to mention the Holy Ten, even the magisters of the General Guild can't beat. As for the crusade against Zarif's demons, let them go now. But the truth is the truth. In terms of face, this group of congressmen still can't let it go so easily. As a result, Yajima and a member of the House of Representatives confronted each other directly, and no one was willing to take a step back. Haha, what are you all doing? Everyone is an old man in the magic world, and they are all role models for young people. Why are you so competitive? How about this? Let's take a step back from each other. Mr. Yajima and everyone sitting here, don't worry about character and strength. Holy Ten is a role model for countless magisters in the magic world, and he must be chosen. A talent with both character and strength. At the moment when countless counselors were silent, Torchi Anderba, an outlier among the counselors of the Magic Council, spoke. Mr. Toki is right. The 10 great magisters of the Holy Spirit are the role models of countless magisters in the magic world. What we want to choose is someone who has both character and strength. As Tochi opened his mouth, a group of congressmen seemed to have found the steps, and immediately walked down the steps given by Tochi Anderba. When Yajima heard the words, he said coldly, and didn't say anything, mainly because Toki Anderba's words were indeed impeccable. Hehe. Tochi Anderba looked at Yajima, who was snorting coldly, smiled lightly and said nothing, and continued to talk on his own. I have a candidate here, who is the best in terms of character and strength. Choose. You can consider one or two. The person chosen by Mr. Tochi must be someone who has no problems. That's right. That's right. There will be no problems with the person chosen by Mr. Toki. That's right. I also support Senator Toki Underbar. After all, Tochi Anderba is different from Yajima. Yajima is an old man. Apart from his status as a member of parliament, he has no status. That is to say, it doesn't matter if he offends Yajima. But Tochi Anderba is different. Even if he is no longer a member of parliament, he is still the warden of the magic prison Blackvox. He is a member of parliament with real power. Several MPs echoed. Even if they hadn't heard who Mr. Toki Anderbar recommended, they had already started to agree. Hehe, thanks to everyone's trust. In fact, you should have heard of the magister I chose. Tochi Anderba saw that the atmosphere was enhanced here, so he was going to give everyone a surprise. Yajima knows that the general situation is over. No matter how high his prestige is, he can't compare with the real power figures. He is at most the signboard of the Magic Council. Well, these fools are getting smarter than the other, no one will listen to him at all. Yajima has long seen through the dirty faces of these members of the Magic Council. The only pity is that he can't help his friend, Pony, Makarov Dolea. Just when Yajima looked helpless, he heard Toki Anderba whispering, the person I chose is none other than the one who protected the safety of the residents of a town during the battle against Daliola. Ulu Milkovich is the top choice both in terms of character and strength. Of course, she is also the same as the two magisters recommended by Mr. Yajima just now, Mr. Kildas and Mr. Yuen. Belongs to a member of a Magister's guild called Fairy Tale. Ulu. Good. Uru. Yes, it's really good. It's just her. No, wait, Mr. Toki, which guild's Magister did you say that Ulu is? We don't seem to hear clearly. Why did we hear the words fairy tale? We must have misheard, are you right? Can you say it again? This Magister named Ulu belongs to which Magister guild? Just as a group of judges kept flattering Toki Anderbar, they suddenly realized something, and all of them shut their mouths. Hee, as you said, she is the Magister of Fairy Tale. Tochi Anderba smiled at everyone and replied. This. All of a sudden, the faces of the congressmen were gloomy and uncertain. Could it be that? Instead, Yujima, who seemed to be defeated just now, came back to life with full blood, and he looked in the direction of Torchi Anderbar. I saw that Toki Anderba was also looking in the direction of Yujima. The two of them looked at each other and then smiled at the same time, thinking, yes. That's right, it's a friendly army. Ulu, Fairy Tale Magister, this. A group of members of the House of Representatives were all embarrassed after hearing what Tochi Anderbar said. Only now did they realize that they had been tricked, that Mr. Toki Anderbar and Mr. Yujima were in the same boat. It's just that one sings bad faces and the other sings red faces. As for them, they are a bunch of fools. What are you still hesitating about? You need to know that Yuen and Ulu's crusade against Daliola is a major event that shakes the continent. If the 10 holy magisters selected this year were not from 2 people, then wouldn't our magic council become a joke? Who will dare to call us an impartial magic council in the future? Who will trust us? I know everyone has some complaints about Fairy Tale. But everyone, you have to be clear. Which one is more important, the momentary anger or the centuries-old reputation of our magic council? I think you can understand what I mean. Tochi Anderba smiled at everyone, and then his face immediately became serious, telling the pros and cons of the matter to the audience present. We understand. Although the members of the House of Representatives were unwilling, but as Tochi Anderba said, unless they no longer select new Holy 10 Magisters in the future, once the Holy 10 Magisters are selected, the result will be the Holy 10 Magisters. The people with the title of Top 10 Magisters are not the heroes who defeated the great demon Daliola created by the Black Mage Jareth, so their magic council will probably become a joke in the magic world of Ishgar mainland, right? Then, let's start voting now. Please choose among the candidates, Gildas Clivy, Ulu Marukobik, and Ewan Bersarian. After Crawford Him reached an agreement with the ideas of a member of the House of Representatives, he, as the Magic Council, whispered. I vote for Ulu. I vote for Uru. I'm like Uru. You can only choose Uru. If you choose Kildas, the Magister who is famous in the mainland, as the Holy 10, our Magic Council will still be treated as a joke by the magic world. The magic world will think that we have surrendered to the power is it. It's unfair. How is Egwene? Egwene is too young. No matter how powerful Egwene is, he is only an 11-year-old brat. If he is chosen, what will the magic world of Ishgar think of us? They will think that we are old and blind. A group of members of the Magic Council discussed. If this is the case, the result is very clear. It is a pity that Gildas Clive was defeated again, and Ewan Bersarian was also defeated. The new person who won the title of the Holy 10 Magisters is Ulu Mi Rookie Beach. The chairman of the Magic Council announced the final result. At the same time, this fat man who was good at super ancient character magic looked at Yuen's surname thoughtfully. The surname Belsarian is rare in the history of the Ishgar continent. It is recorded that there is only the legendary virtuous dragon, and in the legend, the name of the virtuous dragon is his surname. It's the queen. Could it be the descendants of that queen? But I remember that at the end of the story, the queen seemed to turn into a dragon and fly away, leaving no descendants. Haha, maybe I was thinking too much, or maybe it was just a coincidence. This president of the council can become the chairperson of the Magic Council. Although he is not a good person, he is still very knowledgeable, especially proficient in the history of the continent of Ishgar. When he saw Yuen's surname, he immediately thought of there were a lot of things, but in the end he shook his head. I don't know if I really think it's impossible, or because the truth is too scary, so I forcibly numb myself and stop thinking about it. The meeting is over. After thinking about it for a while, but I didn't understand it, the chairman of the Magic Council announced the adjournment of the council meeting, and the next step was to spread the news of Ulu's selection of the Holy 10 to the mainland, and the job was over. Ha! The chubby speaker let out a foul breath. He finally did something big before the new year, so his political achievements can be regarded as achievements. Meanwhile, fairy tale. Tomorrow is the harvest festival, right? Everyone is all together again. It's such a long-lost feeling. All the people in the guild gathered together, because the harvest festival was coming soon. All the magisters in fairy tale stopped working. For the magisters of fairy tale, among the countless events in a year, there are only 2 events that almost all members participate in, and one of them is the harvest festival. As for the other one, it is fairy tale's annual S-level magister exam. Whenever these 2 activities are carried out, Makarov will call all the staff in advance. It's just different from the S-level magister assessment. After 99% of the members are called, they are actually for the show. The people who really participate in the event are those selected by the president, have a job. The Harvest Festival is like a new year for the members of Fairy Tale and the townspeople of Magnolia. For this reason, not only did Yen and Erza not go out to do missions, but even Lakuzes, who always said he was dismissive of the Harvest Festival, stayed behind. Yes, this guy with a lot of hairy and arrogance since ancient times, said that he doesn't want it, but his body is unexpectedly honest. Just when the members of the Fairy Tale Guild gathered together, drank beer, and chatted about the mountains. Outside the gate of the Fairy Tale Guild, a group of uninvited guests appeared. Here, is this fairy tale? The door of the Fairy Tale Guild was gently pushed open, and a civil servant of the Magic Senate walked into Fairy Tale under the guard of a group of soldiers from the Magic Senate. Ah, are you members of the Magic Council? I don't know what you guys from the council are doing in our guild. The Magister of Fairy Tale saw who was coming, and immediately looked bad. For Fairy Tale, their attitude towards the Magic Council is not much stronger than the attitude of the Dark Guild towards the Magic Council. Is this the Magister of Fairy Tale? It's scary, I'll tell you seniors, it's not good to push this job to me. The civil servant surrounded by more than a dozen soldiers looked at the vicious Fairy Tale Magisters all around him, and his expression panicked. In fact, he didn't want to come. Mentors are by no means good stubble. But who made him the youngest among the civil servants? Hugh, be rude, you depraved magisters. I'm here to announce the order from the Magic Council. The civil servant nervously took out the letter of appointment in his hand, and shouted in a panic, Fairy Tale the Magister of the Guild, Uru Marukobiki, obeys. Exist. Wooloo stood up from his seat when he heard the civil servant's words. Although she didn't know why the people of the Magic Council sought her out, and she wasn't afraid of the troubles the Magic Council would find her, but the face that should be given was still given. Guys of the Magic Senate, why are you looking for Uru? If something bad happens, we won't let you go. Gray and Leon panicked when they heard that the man in front of the Magic Council was looking for Ulu, and threatened the official of the Magic Council. It's scary. That guy is Makarov of the Holy 10, right? He's staring at me. It feels like he's thinking of going outside to ambush me later. There is also that uncle with a wretched face, the famous Magister Kildas, who is in a mess except for his strength. He won't smash me to pieces, right? And those brats who are staring at me. The brown red-haired kid is Yen from Bangsheng, that's right. I heard that this kid takes pleasure in abusing others and likes to hit people with meteorites. The crimson long-haired girl next to Yen, and the bad boy with yellow hair, should be the 2 Erza and Lakuzes who defeated the Dark Guild's Dark Night Walk. I heard from the seniors that all the magisters they took in from these 2 people were seriously injured, and many of them were directly sent to the hospital for rescue, and so far they haven't found the S-Class killer card of the president of the Dark Night Walker. The whereabouts of Fuki, according to legend, that murderer has been cooked and eaten by the members of Fairy Tale. Why is this guild actually a group of monsters? They are all so scary. I feel like if I continue to stay here, I will suffocate. I'd better finish reading this letter of appointment and retreat. The civil servant of the Magic Council looked at the people in the Fairy Tale Guild with a look of horror and panic. In the eyes of the civil servants of the Magic Council, Fairy Tale and the strongest Dark Guild are a level of threat. No, to be precise, Fairy Tale, who has a background and can do bad things openly, is more hateful and terrifying than the Dark Guild. So, what do you want me to do? At this time, Ulu had already arrived in front of the civil servant of the Magic Council. Is this guy the same Ulu who tore the demon of Jareth? It looks beautiful, but I didn't expect it to be a monster. The civil servant was taken aback when he heard Ulu's words. He didn't expect that Ulu, who was rumored to have torn the demon Daliola created by Zirf into 108 pieces, turned out to be such a beautiful beauty. However, the civil servant shook his head in the next second, and wiped out all the messy things in his mind. He will not be fooled, and he will not be deceived by his appearance. Ahem. The civil servant coughed twice, cleared his throat, then stood up straight, looked at Ulu seriously, and said, Ulu Marukovich, the Magister of Fairy Tale, obeys. According to the Magic Review, after the discussion of the Council of the Academy, it was decided to appoint you as one of the 10 Holy Magisters. I will give you the medal and honor to represent the Holy 10. I hope you can be proud of it, and make persistent efforts to become a role model for the Magisters of the whole continent. That is, at the same time as the civil servant's voice fell, the soldiers behind him presented Ulu with a silver medal representing the 10 great Magisters. Holy 10. All the Magisters in the Fairy Tale Guild shouted in shock after hearing the civil servant's words. Me, Holy 10 Magisters, thank you for the medal. Ulu was also shocked, but she still accepted the medal from the Magic Council. Okay, in this case, my mission has been completed, and I will take my leave. The civil servant looked at Ulu, who accepted the medal, nodded slightly, then turned around and left quickly. The civil servant walked away quickly, as if he was going to be eaten by the Magisters of Fairy Tale if he was one step too late. I have become one of the top 10 Holy Magisters. Ulu looked at the medal in her hand in disbelief, mainly because it all happened so suddenly. She was unprepared, and she thought she was not mature enough to deserve this medal. That's great, Ulu became a Holy 10. If that's the case, wouldn't Ulu be as powerful as the president's grandfather? Gray and Leon laughed, happy for their teacher. No, Gray, I'm going to die. Shut up, the toilet is mine, I will never give it to you. In the next second, Gray and Leon, who were still smirking, went to compete for the toilet. Yes, Irene's additional magic is still in effect. That's amazing. In this case, we, Fairy Tale, will have 2 Holy 10 Great Magisters. Ha ha ha, our Fairy Tale is the strongest Magister Guild in Fury Kingdom. No, be bold, our Fairy Tale is clearly the strongest Magister Guild in the Ishgar continent. Everyone in Fairy Tale looked at Ulu, who had won the Order of the Holy Cross and the title, and laughed. After seeing Ulu becoming the 2nd Holy Cross, they looked so happy, as if they had also become the Holy Cross. Generally, they are really happy for their companions. Why are you shocked that you can get the title of the Holy 10 Magisters? Makarov walked to the side of Ulu, who was staring at the Holy Cross medal in his hand in a daze, and asked with a smile. No, I just don't have enough self-confidence. I don't think I'm worthy of this medal representing the identity of the 10 great Magisters. Looking at the medal in his hand, Ulu felt more pressure. Perhaps in the eyes of most people, this medal represents status and strength. But in Wulu's view, this medal only represents endless pressure. In Wulu's eyes, this medal is not a good thing. Too much glory can make people lose themselves. Ulu opened up his world with great difficulty, and didn't want to close his world again. The medal of the Holy 10 Magisters is just a medal. There is nothing worthy of it. It is just a false name. Since the Magic Council issued this medal to you, you should wear it. Makarov looked at the trembling Ulu and smiled slightly. The 10 Great Holy Wizards are just a title, you really have to take this title seriously. If you really think that you have won the title of Holy 10, you are truly one of the 10 strongest Magisters in the continent of Ishgar, then you are a fool. But, whether it's Egwene or Kildith, they are more suitable than me to become the top 10 Holy Magisters. Wulusho frowned slightly. She thought that her strength was no match for Yuen and Kildith's. About this, please look over there. After listening to Ulu's words, Makarov sighed softly, corrected Ulu's gaze, and looked at Yuen and Kildith at the side. Only an idiot would drink coffee with sugar, coffee must be bitter. No, bitter coffee is undrinkable at all, why would anyone like that kind of soup? Are you looking for faults? Do you want to fight? If you want to fight, just say it. Fighting. I've never been afraid of anyone, stay with me to the end. What did you say? +2. I saw Gildas and Yuen sitting on their seats, wrestling their wrists and spraying each other. It seems that the two of them didn't care at all, that Wulahuo didn't get the top 10 Holy Magisters. They don't even care whether they have won the title of the top 10 Holy Magisters. If those two idiots won the title of Holy 10 Magisters, they will definitely become even more complacent and intensified. Maybe they will go to attack a certain country when they have nothing to do one day. Makarov looked at Gildas and Egwene and sighed helplessly. In fact, there are indeed countries that employ magisters to fight wars. Makarov's attitude towards this kind of mission is that he can't go if he can't. After all, this kind of mission is very dangerous, and a lot of troubles will be involved if it is not done well. Of course, if the member insists on going, then Makarov will not stop him. Forehead. After listening to Makarov's words, Ulu was silent for a while. Simply put, Makarov's words are quite reasonable. In short, since the Magic Council has selected you as the Holy 10 Magisters, you don't have to have any psychological burden. The Holy 10 is just a false name. After persuading Ulu, Makarov walked towards Gildas and Evan with his hands behind his back. Halfway through the walk, Makarov seemed to have thought of something, turned his head, looked at Ulu furtively and said, "By the way, you wear the Holy 10 Magister medal issued by the Magic Council. It's free to take transportation in some countries protected by the Magic Council. Even if it's not free, you can get a discount. I won't tell ordinary people." After Makarov finished speaking, he continued to walk towards Egwene and Gildas. Not long, Ulu heard Makarov yelling at Yen and Gildas, "You can't drink something like coffee with or without sugar. Real men drink beer. You two drink coffee. The guy, to put it bluntly, is still not mature enough." "What? Would you like to hear what you just said? Even if you are the president, I will not show mercy." Immediately afterwards, the guild became lively again, and the three strongest male magisters of Fairy Tale fought together. Fortunately, none of the three used their magic power, so Yen won an overwhelming victory. Egwene, already perfectly integrated with Fairy Tale. Ha ha. Wulu looked at the scene in front of him, and all the original pressure in his heart disappeared. "It's just a medal." As Wulu spoke, he casually played with the medal in his hand for a while, and then put it directly into his pocket. So far, the incident of the Holy 10 is completely over. Perhaps, the next day, the morning of the Harvest Festival. Comfortable. It's completely revived now. Gray and Leon walked out of the toilet with a happy face. The two of them had a stomachache for a week, and they didn't recover until the morning of the Harvest Festival. Yes, in other words, if today was not the Harvest Festival, Irene would never have bypassed these two broths so easily. That Yen, our teacher Ulu, has won the title of the Holy 10 Great Magisters. She surpasses you. After Gray's body recovered, he ran to Egwene before becoming skinny. "It's more comfortable when you have diarrhea." Egwene glanced at Gray and spoke softly. "Forehead. I mean, Ulu has won the title of the Holy 10 Great Magisters. You don't even have this title, do you?" Gray repeated his own words. He wanted to be angry with Egwene in this regard. Although Gray knew that he couldn't beat Egwene in terms of strength, he could at least beat Egwene in some respects. To put it bluntly, it was just a child's comparability. At this moment, Gray seemed to have acquired a new toy, showing it off in front of other children. "So?" Egwene looked at Gray indifferently and asked. "So?" Gray looked at Yen's calm expression, and the corners of his mouth twitched slightly. "What is so?" "Ulu won the title of Holy 10, but you didn't. Don't you feel unwilling?" "Ah, Ulu won the title of the Holy 10, but I didn't get the title of the Holy 10, I really can't be reconciled. I'm so pissed off. I'm really not reconciled." After hearing what Gray said, Egwene immediately understood what Gray was here for, and saw Egwene calmly preaching to Gray as if coaxing a child. So fast. Gray looked at Egwene's extremely calm face and said that he was not reconciled, and almost fell to his knees by accident. He looked at Egwene with black lines all over his head, and Gray knew that Egwene was not reconciled at all. "Why do you and Gildas look like you don't care about the title of Holy 10? So Gray asked very unwillingly. "Does that even matter? The 10 strongest magisters in the Ishgar continent selected by the Magic Council, just listen to it." Yen didn't seem to care at all. Anyway, the saints in the later stage are all miscellaneous soldiers, so it's useless for him to care. Meanwhile on the other side, Holy 10. Who cares about that kind of thing? Besides, why does the Magic Council rank me with the other 9 magisters and call me the 10 strongest magisters in Ishgar? As long as one is the strongest, is it enough? Why are all 10 people called the strongest? Don't you think it's weird? After listening to Leon's words, Gildas didn't care at all. He even went too far compared to Yuan, who just thought that the Holy Cross was just a false name. However, in the eyes of Gildas, if he is given the same title as other magisters, it will immediately lower his grade. Regarding the fact that the Holy 10 magisters have not been assembled yet, so even the ranking among the Holy 10 has not been carried out, and Gildas is very dissatisfied. He, Gildas, is the strongest, and the emphasis is on the strongest. Don't look at his wandering appearance all day long, he is recognized as the strongest magister in the west of Ishgar continent. These 2 guys really don't take the title of Holy 10 magisters seriously. Gray and Leon looked at each other, and then spoke silently in their hearts. Gray and Leon sat in the corner of the guild as if they had been hit by something. For Egwene and Gilda's disdain for the title of the Holy 10 magisters, Gray and Leon reset their views on magic. Especially Egwene and Gilda's Holy 10 magisters, they didn't have any special appearance at all, which made Gray and Leon, who were complacent because of Ulu's light and got the title of Holy 10, instantly calm down. Leon, let's cheer up. We can't continue to be decadent like this. Gray took a deep breath, his eyes gradually became sharper, he wants to be self-improvement, he wants to keep going. You were right, Gray, we must work hard to catch up with Ulu. One day we will also receive the title and medal of the 10 great magisters. After hearing Gray's words, Leon trembled, and then balls of flames burned in his eyes. Leon, you know it. Our goal is also in the guild now. Taking advantage of the moment when fairy tale members gather with the guild because of this festival, we must challenge them, defeat them, and win the battle. Our first battle into fairy tale. Gray patted Leon's shoulder, and looked at Lakuzes and Erza who were sitting in 2 directions of the guild. At this time, Erza and Lakuzes seemed to have deliberately opened some distance, one sitting in the front of the guild, and the other sitting in the back of the guild. You can faintly feel the tit-for-tat between the 2 people. Yes, because Fairy Tale's S-level Magister assessment is coming soon, Lakuzes and Erza have already regarded each other as their opponents. Go and challenge them. On the other hand, Gray and Leon had wishful thinking, and regarded Lakuzes and Erza as the targets of their challenges. Lakuzes, fight with me. Gray took a sharp breath, walked up to Lakuzes, and watched the dazed Lakuzes preach. Hearing this, Lakuzes turned his head, looked towards Gray, and then smiled dismissively. I'm sorry. I'm not interested in perverts who don't even know how to put on their clothes. Who do you call a pervert? Gray was furious when he heard the words, and he was about to release magic while speaking. Gray, clothes. Karna passing by glanced at Gray and reminded. Okay. After hearing Karna's words, Gray looked at himself, and then his face turned pale with shock. Why are my clothes missing? When did I take it off? I have no memory at all. Gray looked at his naked body, with only a pair of big pants covering his private parts, and looked surprised. Lakuzes looked at Gray who had only one big underpants on and gave a disdainful smile, then stood up from his seat and walked towards the outside of the guild. Where are you going, Lakuzes? We agreed today, everyone will get together. Kana looked at the back of Lakuzes leaving and asked. Don't worry, I'm just going out to get some air, and I'll be back in the afternoon. After hearing Kana's question, Lakuzes replied without looking back. Lakuzes, don't run away. Just when Lakuzes was about to leave the guild and go outside to feel the breeze of freedom, Gray, who was dressed, stopped Lakuzes in his way. Okay. Lakuzes looked at Gray and frowned. I've said it all, Lakuzes. Fight me before leaving. I regard you as my challenge target. There was a burst of cold air on Gray's body, and he looked at Lakuzes and smiled. I thought you, kid, were a relatively calm type, but I didn't expect you to be a hot-blooded idiot. Can't you tell the difference in strength between us? Just rely on the current you, practice for another 10 years, and challenge me again. After Lakuzes looked Gray up and down, he shook his head in disdain. For the current Lakuzes, Gray is too weak to mention any qualities at all. Without further ado, the shape of ice. Gray frowned, and put his hands in a magical pose, and suddenly the cold air gathered towards him. Then warm up a little. Lacuzes looked at Gray and smiled slightly, followed by Lacuzes' words. Suddenly there was thunder, screaming wildly in everyone's ears. That's Gray and Lacuzes, right? Ha ha ha, finally someone is fighting. I'm getting impatient. Accompanied by bursts of thunder, the members who had been doing nothing in the guild all gathered around, watching Gray and Lacuzes dueling excitedly. By the way, there seems to be a duel over there. Is it Leon and Erza? Ha ha, the two brothers Gray and Leon finally couldn't stand it anymore. Are they ready to move towards the guild summit? But, it's still too early, isn't it? Some guild members commented on the fact that Leon and Gray challenged Erza and Lacuzes. In their eyes, although they were very excited about someone fighting, this kind of challenge without any suspense was lacking. For the current Gray and Leon, it is too early to challenge Lacuzes and Erza. Boom! Just as the atmosphere between Gray and Lacuzes became more and more serious, and the surrounding audience became more and more excited, a roar eased the originally solemn atmosphere. What happened? Gray was taken aback, bewildered. Yes, this roar was not made by Gray and Lacuzes. HMPH. Erza made the move, right? When Lacuzes heard the roar, he seemed to think of something, snorted coldly, and thought silently. The other side. Guild relatively front place. Erza gently withdrew her weapon, and while watching, Leon, who was knocked down by her instantly, said, "You lost." It knocked me down with just one blow. Is the gap that big? Leon was lying by the bar with his eyes blank. He fought Erza so quickly that he was killed by Erza before he even had time to react. Your name is Leon, right? You picked the wrong opponent. Keep practicing. After Erza finished speaking, she turned around and left in a sassy manner. What? Leon has already been killed. So fast. Gray looked at Leon who was lying on the ground, his pupils trembled. He knew that Leon should not be Erza's opponent, but he did not expect that the duel between Leon and Erza would be decided so quickly. Even though everyone is about the same age, is there really such a big gap? When Gray thought this way, he had already forgotten that Yen was actually the same age as them. Aluza's side is over. Then let's start the battle between us. At the same time, Lacuzes withdrew his gaze and looked at Gray. Okay. Gray shuddered instantly. He could feel that after Erza defeated Leon with one blow, Lacuzes looked at him strangely. Boom. Before Gray was ready, a golden thunderbolt was instantly released from Lacuzes' hands, hitting Gray instantly. Forehead. The moment Gray was hit, he felt that the magic power in his body was not running smoothly, and his whole body was extremely soft, and he couldn't exert all his strength. Just lay down here for 5 minutes. After finishing speaking, Lacuzes bypassed Gray who was lying on the ground, and walked out of the gate of the Fairy Tale Guild. It's 0.5 seconds faster than Erza, this time I won. Lacuzes, who left the guild, looked at the sky and smiled brightly. Yes, after Erza killed Leon in seconds, this is not just Gray, Leon's challenge to Lacuzes and Erza, but also a confrontation between Lacuzes and Erza. This side is also an instant kill. Ha ha ha, this is expected. Sure enough, whether it's Erza or Lacuzes, they're all real monsters. Everyone in the guild looked at Gray and Leon who were collapsed on the ground and laughed. Next time, we must call back. As for Gray and Leon who were instantly killed, they kept shouting in their hearts at this moment. In the afternoon, the sky gradually darkened. Everyone, how are the floats prepared? Makarov, dressed in a clown costume, with his arms wrapped around his body, looked at his children and shouted. At this moment, Makarov is like an ordinary old man, without the slightest airs of the Holy 10 Magisters. It's all ready. Gray and Leon, 2 bandages wrapped around their bodies and band-aids on their faces, walked up to Makarov. How did you two make yourself like this? Makarov stared at the miserable appearance of Gray and Leon, and then asked. It fell. Gray turned his head and said embarrassedly. Yeah, I fell. Leon was also a little embarrassed. They really couldn't tell Makarov that the reason why they became what they are now is completely the result of their overthinking, challenging Erza and Lacuzes and being instantly killed. If that's the case, the candidates for this year's float have been decided. Let Gray and Leon stand at the top. After Makarov finished speaking, he looked at Lacuzes who was on the side. What a pity. Lacuzes, even if you want to be the top card this year, you won't have a chance. Makarov smiled meanly at his grandson. Who cares? Hearing this, Lacuzes widened his eyes and shouted. Ha 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 ha. Immediately, there was another burst of laughter in the fairy tale guild. Anyway, the annual float parade. Let's begin. With Makarov yelling. The magisters of fairy tale are busy one after another. Night. Townspeople from Magnolia came to both sides of the street, waiting for something. Countless children stared wide-eyed, looking forward to this annual event. When night falls, the float of fairy tale moves forward slowly. Naturally, Gray and Leon were standing in the first row. They used ice modeling magic at the same time, and countless weapons and animals flew into the sky in an instant. Then it exploded and turned into ice crystals. What a nice view. It's so cool. The surrounding townspeople looked at the countless ice crystals flying into the sky, and they all showed happy expressions. They stretched out their hands and grabbed the sky. The cold ice crystals melted in their palms, making the townspeople feel numb. The shape of ice, Rose Castle. Immediately afterwards, Ulu stood in the center of the float. Her hands gathered magic power, and a castle made of ice flowers was instantly formed on the float. Ulu, on the other hand, naturally stood on the top of the castle, like a queen, beckoning to the townspeople standing on both sides of the street. I know her. She is the new fairy tale Holy Ten Magister, the hero who defeated Daliola. The townspeople of Magnolia looked at Ulu who had built the ice and snow castle, and they all started discussing. What are the 10 Holy Magisters? A townsman who was not familiar with the wizarding world asked suspiciously. The top 10 Holy Magisters seem to be the 10 strongest Magisters in the entire continent selected by the Magic Council. By the way, Makarov, the current guildmaster of Fairy Tale, is one of the 10 Holy Magisters. Some townspeople who knew the magic world looked at the townspeople who didn't understand, and explained triumphantly. Ah, isn't Fairy Tale a guild that monopolizes the 2 strongest Magisters in the world? Is it so powerful? The townspeople who didn't understand the magic world were shocked and looked at Ulu on the float. It's just so powerful. A townsman who knew the magic world, with his arms wrapped around his body, kept nodding his head, as if he, too, was so powerful. Change. Armor of the Sky Wheel. Appearing behind Ulu is Aluza Bersarian. I saw her manipulating the weapons of the armor of the Sky Wheel obtained from the mission, posing freely in the sky. From blossoming flowers, to the pattern of the Fairy Tale Guild, it is pleasing to the eye. Zzz. Next it's my turn. Lakuzas, who had been preparing for a long time, saw Erza summoning countless weapons to fly into the sky, and a terrifying thunderbolt was released from him, directly landing on Erza's weapons. Immediately, Erza's weapon radiated bursts of golden light, which made Ursha's pose even more beautiful. Yes, Lakuzas not only participated in the annual Harvest Festival this year, but also participated in the Fairy Tale Parade. At last, it's the old man's turn. At the end of the float, Makarov stretched his muscles and bones. First, he turned into a huge giant and walked on the street. The terrifying aura made the townspeople on both sides of the road feel terrified. What is that? Giant? No, is it President Makarov? Just when passers-by were startled. In the next second, he turned into a short clown, stood on top of the ice castle made by Ulu, and played the ice puck in his hand funny in front of everyone. Ha ha ha. For a moment, the townspeople in the small town of Magnolia laughed out loud. As expected of President Makarov. Still hilarious as always. Some old residents of the town of Magnolia couldn't help but cry when they saw Makarov's funny appearance. No one could imagine that that funny little old man was actually a very powerful magister. We are the magisters of Fairy Tale. When the float was about to end, Makarov put down the ice puck in his hand, said, and raised his right hand high, pointing his index finger to the sky. At the same time, the other members of Fairy Tale also raised their arms high. They also imitated Makarov's appearance and made the gesture of Fairy Tale. Old man, you still remember. Lukusas blushed slightly, feeling a little bit in his heart. When you raise your finger, it doesn't matter whether you are in a different place or you can't return to Fairy Tale because of some things, just raise your head and look at the sky, the hearts of everyone in Fairy Tale are connected. Shish, 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 shish. The moment Makarov raised his finger, the entire Magnolia was illuminated by golden light. The next second, a burst of golden light flew into the sky, forming a pattern of Fairy Tale in the sky, and then exploded like fireworks. It's fireworks. What a nice view. Ha ha ha. Fairy Tale is a big deal every time. The townspeople in the small town of Magnolia laughed loudly as they watched the beautiful fireworks exploding in the sky. Is it Egwene? Makarov looked at the golden fireworks in the sky, the corners of his mouth slightly raised. Now it's done. Near the cabin in the woods deep in the east of Fairy Tale, Egwene wiped the sweat from her forehead. He was still very satisfied with the beautiful scene he made with the shiny fruit. Hey, brat, you are not welcome here. Now that the town of Magnolia is having a celebration, go back and celebrate honestly. Don't always run to me. Just as Yen was admiring her masterpiece, a voice with a bit of resentment sounded behind Yen's ear. It's Senior Poliusica. I'm here to bring you a cake. After Yen heard the voice behind her, she smiled and took out the gift she had prepared. This is the wine made by Irene, the bread and cakes baked by myself, and the meat of the monster I hunted. As Yen said, she snapped her fingers, and a table appeared in front of the person behind her, and then delicious food appeared on the table. You kid. Poliusica looked at the lit candles on the table in front of him and the food on the table, his eyes trembled. Don't tell yourself to prepare dinner for me. When Poliusica turned sideways and yelled at Yen had disappeared without a trace, leaving only a piece of paper that looked like a refrigerator. Happy holidays, Senior Poliusica. After a short sentence, there is nothing. Little devil. Poliusica's eyes softened as she looked at the note, she seemed to recall her youthful days. As for Yen has already returned home to celebrate the festival with Irene. At the same time, as Makarov raised his finger high. In an unknown mine in the continent of Ishgar, under the urging of countless soldiers, a thin old man with chains wrapped around his body raised his head and looked at the golden circle hanging high in the sky. You seem to be missing something. Roar. On the snow-capped mountain, a wyvern with white scales was roaring at the young man in front of him. Facing this kind of magical beast with dragon blood, super high magic resistance, and a magister killer, the young man looked extremely calm. Boom. During the whistling, the clouds seemed to split open in the sky. A meteorite burning with endless flames fell from the sky. The keen senses of the wyvern seemed to hear the roar of the sky, they looked up, and then their eyes widened. Boom. With the fall of the meteorite, the flying dragon and the snow mountain disappeared in place in an instant. It's done now. After all the flying dragons were killed by the meteorite, the boy came to the body of the flying dragon, picked up the broken scales on the ground, and whispered. As for why the boy appeared here, time goes back to a few hours ago. Fairy Tale 24 hours. Egwene sat at the bar and heard Makarov preach. That's right, because everyone has completed a lot of tasks this year, and the guild's funds are relatively rich, so we plan to hold an event for all members. Makarov smiled at Egwene and preached. So that's the case, but it's okay. Egwene nodded slightly. Speaking of which, he has been investigating the matter of human traffickers recently. The so-called human traffickers naturally refer to the group of idiots who don't know what to say and plan to live in the Tower of Paradise and revive Jeff through the R system. A group of people with brain twitches actually thought of constructing a big magic to resurrect a person who would not die by itself, and Yen didn't know what to say. And Yen has two purposes for investigating this group of constructors who were used by others to build the R system. First, this group of people is a cancer. If they are allowed to move around on the mainland, more children will be forced to lose their families, and those who were regarded as slaves by the R Church, Yen also tried to rescue them. After all, there are many good people in it, and there is one person who should be regarded as a senior of the guild. The second is that the person standing behind the scenes of the R order of the R system is very likely to be Precto. After all, although the host of the R system is Brian, the head of the 6 demon generals, he has been behind the scenes. The person who manipulated everything, including sending Arusha to confuse Gerald to continue to complete the R system, was Prexito, the 2nd generation president of Fairy Tale. Of course, at this point in time, Prexito Thor should have changed his name to Hades. The third is Arusha. After all, Yen agreed to find Arusha with Ulu. According to Yen's memory, when Arusha saw Ulu and her 2 apprentices, that is, Gray and Leon, laughing happily together, she mistakenly thought that Uru had abandoned her, so little Arusha returned to Brian alone to continue training. After Arusha showed super talent and destroyed the experimental base, Arusha should have been introduced to Precto by Brian. In other words, Arusha should have learned the Arc of Time under Precto, or some other lost magic. As for whether Arusha finally chose to practice a certain kind of magic, whether he would practice the arc of time like in the original book, Yuan was not sure, mainly because the old Precto had too many lost magic. And right now, this is the problem that troubles Yuan to continue to search for Arusha. With Precto's magical attainments, the other party may hide her stronghold. Moreover, the whole continent of Ishgar is so big, it would be very difficult for Yuan to find Preshido running around all over the continent, but Yuan can choose to wait and see, but the premise of this waiting is to find a tree that can be guarded. 1. Two people's strength is still limited. Egwene scratched her hair vigorously and spoke weakly. Although Yuan also approached Ulu to inquire about the other party's information collection, but unfortunately, Ulu was in the same situation as him, and the progress of the two was very slow. For this kind of information gathering work, it is not based on the strength of the Magister, but on the intelligence network, contacts, and the number of people. Obviously, Yuan and Ulu did not have the ability in this area. Why don't you ask the president for help? Yuan thought about it. Makarov, as one of the 10 holy magisters, and even got mixed up with a group of guild leaders, should far surpass Yuan and Ulu in terms of connections and information. So Yuan, please help me get the scales of the blizzard monster. At this moment, Makarov looked at Egwene and asked. Blizzard demon beast. That kind of thing can be easily defeated by Lakuzas or Erza, right? Yuan was not interested in the so-called Blizzard Warcraft mission that Makarov said, and his mind was now full of things about the R system. That kind of thing is dangerous, Lakuzas and Erza are immature. Makarov shook his head. In his eyes, the current Lakuzas and Erza are still not qualified enough. I see. Yuan yawned, and planned to take time to help Makarov get rid of the scales of this snow monster, but his primary goal was to collect information and find members of the R Order. Ding! The mission is open. Win the Fairy Tale 24-hour endurance race champion, and reward a century-old mission badge. Remarks. Please don't cheat the host, let's go all out. Just when Yuan was listless and ready to perfunctory Makarov, the task of system update made Yuan's eyes startled. A badge of the century mission level. Yuan was shocked, and at the same time, she frowned slightly, that is to say, in the eyes of the system. Yuan wanted to win the Fairy Tale 24-hour endurance race, and accepting the century-old mission and killing a few dragons was a level of difficulty. Simply put, it was an impossible task. Interesting. This made Yuan feel a little bit interesting. He would like to see who can be faster than him, who has the sparkling fruit, the straightforward speed, and the speed of light. Ever since, Yuan found Wyvern, and brought the scales of the flying dragon back to the guild. Ah, this is the scale of the Wyvern, right? Makarov frowned looking at the scales in front of him. Isn't it the same? Egwene looked at Makarov puzzled. The scales of the blizzard monster I want. The most essential difference between him and the Wyvern is that one eats grass, while the other eats meat. To put it simply, the blizzard monster is a harmful monster. He will devour a lot of rare herbs, but the Wyvern will hunt and kill many monsters that endanger humans, and because the magic power in the human body is low, and the meat is too greasy and the protein content is not much. The reason is that Wyverns generally don't attack ordinary humans. Wyverns are beneficial monsters. Yes, the one that eats grass is bad, the one that eats meat is good. Makarov looked at Yuan and explained the difference between the two kinds of monsters. But it's not your fault, the two big guys look so much alike. Makarov sighed and spoke to Egwene. Then I'll look for it again. As Yuan said, she planned to go to the snow mountain to look for the so-called blizzard demonic beast. In short, let's do this first. The Wyvern is the Wyvern. After hearing what Yuan said, Makarov stopped Yuan immediately. He was afraid that Yuan would misidentify the monster again and wipe out the Wyverns on the snow mountain. Anyway, now that the scales are in hand, let's compete tomorrow. After Makarov stopped Egwene, he preached like this. It is good. Yuan nodded lightly, but he was looking forward to tomorrow's game. So the next day, Fairy Tale, all members of the first Fairy Tale are required to participate. The 24-hour endurance race is on. Hello everyone, I am Jane, the ace reporter from Sosara of Magic Weekly, and I will report for you. First of all, let me tell you about the rules of the event. This year, on the top of Ibor's mountain, many wyvern scales were placed. The winner is the one who gets the scales and returns first. The top 3 will be rewarded. But the last one will be punished, and a funny photo will be taken, which will be published in Sosara, the best-selling weekly magazine in the magic world. The one who spoke was a middle-aged man with short black hair, and beside him was a yellow-haired intern with a relatively youthful face. There are so many activities this year. Varba, with an airplane head and a cigarette holder in his mouth, preached to the crowd. You must be slower than me. Macau is exercising his muscles and bones. In terms of endurance, he is still somewhat confident. Although he can't be the first, there is no problem in ranking among the best. Speed. In terms of speed, Raiden will not lose to anyone. Even Light. Lucusus put his hands in his trouser pockets, and bursts of golden lightning were wrapped around him. At the same time, Lucusus also took a look at Yen beside him. Of course he knew Yen's ability. Lucusi decided to compete with Yen. I won't lose. Erza was wearing a professional sportswear for sprinting, exercising her muscles. Why should I participate in such a boring competition? If you waste time here, the girls will cry. Kildas looked confused, because it was almost the end of the year, so he didn't go out to do the mission. Stop talking nonsense. Makarov spoke to the listless Kildas. Fate shows that my grades will not be very good. Kana wanted to cry, she was really not good at running or something. Gray, Leon, let's work hard together. Gray and Leon looked at each other, eager to try. Children are like this, they are motivated in everything. You too, I don't know how to release water. Standing behind Gray and Leon, Ulu smiled. Is Uru also participating? After hearing Ulu's words, Gray and Leon were shocked. Certainly, Ulu nodded. Not only would she participate, but she was aiming to win. At the same time, it was also for relaxation. She was not very optimistic about the investigation task that Yen told her about these days. The opponent's hiding method is very powerful, but this is of course, if the hiding method is not powerful, it should have been discovered by the Magic Council long ago. There is no one who can be called an opponent at all. Could it be that the system looked at me poorly and gave me a century-old medal for nothing? Yen looked at the contestants around her, raised her brows, and felt puzzled. Yen, who owns the sparkling fruit, is really a bit flustered. In his eyes, there is nothing faster than light in this world. At the same time, Yen looked forward to the reward he received when he won the first place, the Centennial Mission Medal, which is a universal medal that can be upgraded at will. I don't care. Let's talk after winning the championship. Yen moved her body a bit. His goal was simple, to win the fairy tale 24-hour road race. Allah. Just when Yen regarded the champion of the endurance competition as his own, a voice that was extremely familiar to Yen sounded from behind him. Hey. No way. This voice, could it be that? Yen trembled when she heard the voice behind her. Now he finally knew why the system set the reward for winning the 24-hour endurance race as the Centennial Mission Medal. It can be said that this mission is completely dependent on the strength of a person who appears behind him at this moment, and the level is carried up. It's a pity, Yen, and Erza, because the president said that all members are forced to participate. Today we are opponents. Irene smiled slightly at Yen and Erza. Is Eren also participating in the 24-hour endurance race? It's a mistake. If Irene is also participating, then the difficulty of the mission can indeed be called a 100-year mission level. Yen was startled. If Irene was the opponent, it would be reasonable to call it the difficulty of the century-old mission, right? After all, even if it takes 100 years for the Magisters of Ishgar continent, it is difficult to defeat Irene. But no matter how fast Irene is, she can't be too fast, right? Yen still has the confidence to win the game, at least before Irene makes a move. Yen still has confidence. Until game start. Immediately after Makarov's voice fell, a group of fairy tale magisters moved. This battle is over from the very beginning. In terms of speed, nothing is faster than light. As Yen said, her body turned into countless rays of light and flew into the air. Flying. Isn't this cheating? All the magisters on the ground looked at Yen, who had turned into light and flew into the sky, and shouted unwillingly. Don't say I'm cheating, because in the future, it will only be worse. Yen didn't pay attention to the words of the losers on the ground at all. His body instantly became elementalized. Of course, while elementalizing, he still had to use knowledge to lock the position, otherwise, he would be directly after all. the light is too fast to surpass her target mountain, and even Yen couldn't react when she turned into light and moved. However, the moment Yen used the sparkling fruit, Irene moved. I saw the wand in Irene's hand lightly touching the ground, and her red lips moved slightly. Additional, stop. Yes, faster than light is, time stops. Egwene, but we don't. The magisters who shouted, fairy tale, who can't admit defeat, paused in place for an instant, and they still kept their mouths wide open, angrily scolding Yen for being despicable. In an instant, all the fairy tale magisters who were about to move forward, including a large audience gathered around, their expressions were all paused. Not only that, the time in the entire town of Magnolia was directly suspended by Irene. What is this? This is simply smashing Naruto. Can Irene also add stagnation attributes to time and space within a certain range? Yen, who had upgraded her time resistance to level 8, turned into light and floated in the office, her pupils trembling. Level 8 time resistance gives him a higher resistance to time magic. If the magic power or time magic does not reach level 8, he can mostly ignore it directly, but right now he is still suspended. It's just because the person who releases this time magic is too different from his rank. As a result, the time resistance of level 8 only allows Yen to move her mind freely during Irene's time stop. But that's right, since the war concubine who can use time magic is still ranked below Irene and the Magic King, there is no reason for Irene and the Magic King not to use time to stagnate. Then I'm doomed now. Yen was floating in midair, her thoughts constantly turning. Just when Egwene was thinking. Eren moved. Additional teleportation. Eren's figure disappeared instantly. By the time Irene's figure reappeared within Yen's line of sight, there was already a dragon scale in her hand. After the time stop, teleportation, can you be more lazy? Yen looked at Irene who teleported after the time stop, and smiled bitterly in her heart. Originally, he thought that he was already reckless enough to use elementalization first and move at the speed of light, but compared to Irene, he's still the little witch sees the big witch. Okay, now you can move, Irene whispered softly, and tapped the staff on the ground lightly. Boom, in an instant, everyone's time was restored. First place, Irene Bersarian. It took less than a second. The specific time was so fast that I forgot to press the timer. Then, everyone heard Makarov's voice behind him. In this short moment, the champion of the fairy tale 24-hour endurance race was born. So fast, everyone present was shocked after hearing Makarov's words. Come on everyone. Holding the snow-white scales in her hand, Irene waved to the crowd who subconsciously looked back. Because the president said that everyone must participate. So I'm sorry, this number 1 position, my sister will take it. As Irene said, her vermilion lips gently kissed the white dragon scale in her hand. Hey, that scale is mine now. A group of male magisters looked at the scales kissed by Irene, their eyes filled with hearts, and they kept laughing. What, endurance race prizes don't matter anymore, they just want the scales in Irene's hands. Forehead. It was also because the attention of the group of magisters was attracted by Irene, and as a result of the group of magisters running hard while looking back at Irene, they all fell to the ground. Farewell. At the same time, Yen has already built her own light channel in the sky. Since she can't win the first place, let's take the second place. It's not so easy to get the medal of the 100-year mission level. With that in mind, Egwene was ready to leave. Don't even think about moving forward. Gildas looked at Egwene whose figure began to turn into light, and directly raised his palm. Boom. Immediately, white light covered Yen's body, smashing Yen and Yen's light channel into pieces. Gildas. In the sky, Yen, whose figure slowly converged from the light into a human form, stared at Gildas below her with a hint of anger in her eyes. Yen suddenly felt the feeling that the yellow ape Pelusalino was hindered by Pluto Rayleigh and unable to move forward. Haha, how could it be possible for you to leave so easily? I've been staring at you all the time. Gildas looked at Yen, who was blocked by him, and smiled lightly. Everyone, goodbye. At the moment when Yen and Gildas were confronting each other, Ulu had already covered the ground with ice, and he was making roller skates and moving forward at a high speed. Forward, forward. Behind Ulu are Gray and Leon, the 2 proud disciples of Ulu, who are also good at skating. Who will let you succeed? Lucuses looked at Gray and Leon who were advancing, and there were 2 lightning bolts. forehead. Suddenly Gray and Leon lay on the ground, their bodies numb. And you. After stunning Gray and Leon, Lucusus did not stop, and shot a third bolt of lightning at Ulu. Your thunderbolt is still too tender. This level of tricks is useless to me, brat. Uru seemed to have expected someone to attack from behind. She made a backhand freeze, which directly offset Lucusus's lightning and froze Lucusus's legs at the same time. What? For a while, Lucusus was frozen in place, unable to move forward. Lucusus, you have to remember, you must always be careful behind yourself. Erza stood behind Lucusus, reminding Lucusus to be careful behind her back, and at the same time took out a huge stick with the magic of dressing up, taking advantage of Lucusus to stun Gray and Leon. Ulu it directly froze the moment when the lower body couldn't get out, and knocked it down with a stick. In an instant, the unprepared Lucusus fell directly on the ground after bearing Erza's powerful stick that shattered the ice under Lucusus's feet. When he hit the ground, the pupils in his eyes kept spinning, his brain was in a mess, and he whispered softly, "I Lu." Before Lucusus finished speaking, he lay unconscious on the ground. "It's up to me next. Change clothes," Erza said. Her body flickered for a while, and when the light ended, she had already changed into a ski suit. "Go ahead." Erza stepped on the sled and headed straight for Yulushian. Kilda's die. 8-foot Chong Guyu. When Ulu and Erza moved forward, Yuen's body lit up with a burst of golden light, and shot towards Gilda's. Anyway, the number 1 is gone. Luckily Yuen let go of her hands and feet. Split. Facing Egwene's attack, Gilda's unhurriedly released the shattering magic. The moment when Egwene's light and Gilda's shattering magic touched each other. Boom. Immediately, an astonishing roar erupted between Egwene and Gilda's. "Since you all start using magic, don't blame us." It was also at the moment when Yuen and Gilda's were dueling, the rest of Fairy Tail's magisters began to show their special abilities. Accept magic animals. Cheetah mode. Dress up magic boots. Super high-end running shoes. Drawing magic. Trap magic. Purple flame. Flame whip. Dense fog magic. Fairy Tail magisters released their own magic at the same time, and the running race, which was originally good, turned into a big fight between Fairy Tail magisters. There are constant roars on the field. From time to time, magisters temporarily withdraw from the competition. The reason they quit the game was not because they ran out of strength, but because they were hit to the core by the aftermath of other people's magic. He was sent to the residence of Poliusica in the east for rescue. Ha ha ha. The original sports meeting seems to be heading towards the Magic Fighting Club. Ha ha ha. It's really interesting. For everything in front of me, I can only say that Fairy Tail is indeed the number 1 Magister Guild in the Kingdom of Fury. It's really stylish. The host of the game, holding a microphone, continued to explain. The old man knew it would be like this. This old man's sports meeting. Makarov looked at the magisters of the Fairy Tail Guild who were in love with each other, and his eyes filled with tears. Obviously, this sports meeting is used to improve the image of Fairy Tail in the minds of the townspeople of Magnolia. He even hired the editor-in-chief of Magic Weekly at his own expense, just to improve the magisters of Fairy Tail. The stereotype in the eyes of the mainland people, their Fairy Tail magister is not only good at fighting, but also good at fighting. It's still possible to be approachable and engage in some sports. But now the style of the sports meeting suddenly changed, and it became a magic fight meeting, and the whole fight with the big devil is. Now that Makarov is justified, he can't explain it clearly. Especially, when Makarov saw the editor-in-chief of Magic Weekly and the reporter frantically taking pictures with the camera in his hand, he really came to the right place. To look like the whole big news. Makarov's heart turned cold again. Chapter 71. The next day. Fairy Tail's first 24-hour endurance race. The race is over. Now it's up to me to announce the ranking of this competition. Makarov stood in front of the group of guild members, looking at them seriously. Although in the end, the development of the Fairy Tail 24-hour endurance race made Makarov somewhat helpless. How should I put it? Makarov's ideals are very full, and he wants to use this sports meeting to change the views of the Magic Senate and the mainland people on Fairy Tail Guild. It's a pity that the reality is very skinny. Makarov's education policy for his members makes it impossible for these fools to calm down. Thinking of this, Makarov sighed. looked at the fairy tale members who were able to run out of 10 minor injuries by running in front of him, and remembered their rankings. First of all, the first place in the fairy tale 24-hour endurance race is naturally Irene Bersarian. The reward is 300,000 J. The second place is the second place in the endurance race, Yen Bersarian. The reward is 200,000 J. In the end, the third one to return to the finish line, that is, the third place in the endurance race, Ulu Murukobik. A reward of 150,000 J. The above three members, please stand on the podium after hearing it. After Makarov finished speaking, Irene, Egwene, and Ulu stepped onto the podium. It's almost there. It's a pity that I was careless. Gildas under the podium touched his chin with a helpless look on his face. Originally, he wanted to keep pestering Egwene all the time, and let Egwene get the first place to receive the punishment. It's a pity that things backfired. In the end, Yen, who had been wrestling with him, took the opportunity to find a flaw, and used the ability of Shining Fruit to teleport away, winning the second place in the 24-hour endurance race. As for himself, because he fought with Yen for too long, he only won the bottom position in the end, and even almost got the bottom one. By the way, what Gildas said was almost there. It didn't mean that he was almost able to get the top 3 positions and be on the podium. What he meant was that he was almost able to let Yen take the last place, and then I saw that Yen was devastated. For Gildas, who is pure and fun, it doesn't matter whether he wins the championship or not, the important thing is to watch others suffer. It's only one step away. The fourth place is Erza, who is only a few seconds away from the third place Ulu. Ursha's one step away, is really only one step away from the top 3 positions. Cut. A boring game. Lucusus looked at the crowd on the podium, feeling a little uncomfortable in his heart. In fact, Lucusus doesn't care about the rewards for the top 3. The main reason is that he lost to Erza this time and only won the 5th place. This was a heavy blow to him who regarded Erza as his opponent, but Lucusus said still tough. In fact, Lucusus has already decided that this year he must spend time quietly exercising in ultra-long endurance races, studying the skills in this area, and he must shock everyone when he conducts the fairy tale 24-hour road race again next year. Not only to surpass Erza, but also to defeat Yen. As for Irene Bersarian's record for the fastest return in the fairy tale 24-hour ultra-long endurance race, Lucusus didn't dare to think about breaking records. The main reason is that Lucusus doesn't even know how Irene moves. How can this compare? Meanwhile, Yen on the podium. Although after winning the second place, he still received the reward from the system, but he was not happy. Because after Yen won the second place in the fairy tale 24-hour endurance race, the system only gave Yen an SS level medal as an appeasement prize. The value of the SS level medal is hundreds of times lower than that of the 100-year mission level medal. This made Egwene's heart ache. But, of course it is. If it's so easy to get the 100-year mission level medal, it will make Yen feel uneasy. Egwene tried to hypnotize herself. Yen looks like you still have to work hard. Irene looked at the unhappy Yen, smiled slightly, and then lightly patted Yen's shoulder. Okay. Yen nodded when she heard the words, and he decided to turn around and increase his magic power and time magic resistance. Then it's photo time. Jane, the ace reporter of Sosara, Magic Weekly, held a camera in his hand, and took pictures of Yen and the others, leaving countless photos that made everyone unforgettable. Of course, even the last Magister in the first fairy tale 24-hour endurance race still did not escape punishment. The penultimate number of this year is undoubtedly Gray and Leon. As for the reason why Gray and Leon won the last place, it was because Lucusus wanted to avenge Ulu, but Lucusus couldn't beat Ulu, so he took the knife on Gray who had provoked him. As for Leon Ang was completely dragged down by Gray and Ulu. The penultimate punishment for this year's 24-hour endurance race is to take funny photos, and the theme of the funny photos is women's clothing. I saw Gray and Leon standing on the stage with blushing faces and wearing Lolita skirts, letting the reporters below continue to take pictures. This angle is great. Gray, you are too suitable for women's clothing. Although Leon is not bad, he is still a bit worse than Gray. Gray, are you interested in only wearing women's clothing in the future? The members of Fairy Tale in the audience looked at Gray in women's clothing and kept booing. Asshole. Who wants to wear this thing every day? After hearing the booing of Fairy Tale members in the audience, Gray took off his clothes angrily, and stood on the stage facing the wind with his upper body naked and his lower body only wearing his own big pants. Wow, this angle is good. But I have to say one thing, Gray, you were really bold. Jane looked at Gray, who had just taken off his clothes. He was startled at first, and then kept pressing the shutter of the camera in his hand. Ha ha ha, Gray, you are really interesting. You are not afraid of being naked, but you are afraid of women's clothing. What a strange shame. All Fairy Tale members in the audience laughed loudly as they saw Gray standing on the stage in only a pair of underwear. Stop talking nonsense. This is different. Gray said he would rather go naked than wear a skirt. That's right. Gray and I would rather run naked than dress up as women. This is a matter of principle. Leon patted Gray on the shoulder, and then, following Gray's example, he took off his clothes. In an instant, Gray and Leon, who were at most transvestites, directly upgraded to perverts who like to run naked up. That's right. Gray kept nodding his head. What is his principle with Leon? The principle is to run naked rather than dress up as a woman. Jane is very satisfied with this, and the punishment has been upgraded. Regarding this point, Fairy Tale and the Magisters are very dissatisfied, because Leon and Gray are almost naked in normal times. This kind of daily, tired of streaking, made Fairy Tale's Magisters all feel bored and turned their heads, without any sense of expectation. It's really boring. That's it, that's it. Crack, click, click. While talking, Jane kept pressing the shutter with his nimble fingers, leaving the photos of Gray and Leon in the Magic Weekly Sosara forever. So far, Gray and Leon have won a glorious title in the magic world of Ishgar. They are called the perverted second brother who likes to run naked. With Jane's help, it can be regarded as fulfilling the wish that Gray and Leon have never forgotten in their hearts. They hope that the title of themselves and others can resound across the mainland like Egwene. I don't know when the two of them fought the enemy in the future. When the enemy saw them, he shouted in shock, "No. The enemy is the second naked and perverted brother from Fairy Tale." How Gray and Leon feel in their hearts. With the general gold obtained by Irene, Yen and Ulu, and the rewards of the two brothers Gray and Leon. Like to mention the epic title of Fairy Tale, the perverted second brother who likes to run naked, after all are distributed. The Fairy Tale members who were watching dispersed and returned to the guild. As for Yen, Erza, Irene, and the three of them returned home together. After all, the Bersarian's family won the first and second place in the first sports meeting, which is really worth celebrating. After the three returned home, they had a banquet with Ilya, Yen, and Eden. Then went to sleep early. Speaking of which, Ilya, Yen, and Eden seemed to be the Magisters of Fairy Tale, but they didn't participate in this year's 24-hour endurance race, but were responsible for keeping an eye on the store for Irene. Regarding this point, as the president, Makarov didn't say anything, as if he had acquiesced. The next day, when Yen and the others entered the guild, the Magisters who used to drink, chat and fart had disappeared. What Yen and Erza saw were Fairy Tale Magisters who were registering tasks at the front desk. For a while, the atmosphere of the entire guild seemed to have changed. So that's it, is that day approaching? Yen's keen senses instantly sensed that something was wrong with the atmosphere. He narrowed his eyes slightly, and immediately thought of the reason why the Magisters in the guild were so diligent. Alusha, hurry up and grab the task. If you are late, there will be no task to do. Yen looked at Erza beside her and spoke. It is good. Erza nodded after hearing the words, and then quickly ran towards the signboard. Get away from me. I saw Alusa kicking away, standing in front of the board, not moving for a long time, not only not doing the task herself, but also blocking her from seeing the people on the board. All of them kicked away, and then selected several a more suitable task for her to do. As for Yen, taking advantage of the time when Erza attracted everyone's attention, she flew to the second floor where the S-level missions were stored. What's going on today? Why is everyone so active in doing the task? In my impression, don't everyone hate work the most? Gray and Leon, who came in with Yen and others, looked at the Fairy Tale Magisters who were constantly registering tasks at the front desk of the guild, and asked doubtfully. Hey, hello, Gray, isn't it the end of the world? Everyone decided to do a mission at the end to leave an unforgettable memory for their life that they have never done a mission before. After looking around, Leon watched Gray preach. Ah, it's possible. After hearing what Leon said, Gray nodded slightly, and all of a sudden, Gray seemed to understand everything. Yes, according to Gray and Leon's experience, the members of Fairy Tale will not go to work, and they will not work in this life, so they rely on fighting to make ends meet. So that's it, everyone is starting to hurry up and work. Speaking of which, the time for that should be coming soon. Just as Gray and Leon were puzzled by the drastic change in the atmosphere of Fairy Tale, and countless people ran to work, and had a reasonable discussion, Kana, who walked by Gray and Leon, looked at the busy people in the guild. Completely different from the usual ones, the magisters of Fairy Tale seemed to have thought of something. When is the time coming? After hearing what Kana said, Gray and Leon immediately turned their heads to look at Kana, and asked at the same time. Hey, of course it's Fairy Tale's most important annual event. When Kana heard this, she smiled slightly, and approached Gray and Leon, speaking mysteriously. Gudong. Gray and Leon looked at the mysterious Kana, swallowed a mouthful of spit, and looked at Kana very nervously. Their small heads were spinning rapidly, thinking about the last thing about the so-called fairy tale in Kana's mouth. What is the important event? Fairy Tale's most important annual event, of course, is the S-rank Magister assessment. Stupid. As the Magisters of Fairy Tale, don't you even know this bit of common sense? You are really stupid. Just after accepting the mission, when passing by a few people, Lacuses, who happened to overhear a few people talking, approached Gray, Leon, and Kana at this time, with a mocking tone, to the several people said the man. Lacuses, this is what I want to say. Kana was annoyed that Lacuses suddenly interrupted and took away what she had to say. Haha, who made you speak so slowly, Kana? Lacuses looked at the angry Kana and smiled slightly. S-level Magister assessment. Gray and Leon looked at each other, and they both saw the word shock in each other's eyes. Good. However, you don't need to care about it. After all, the S-level Magister assessment has nothing to do with you two brats. After all, people like you, who won the last place in the Fairy Tale 24-hour endurance competition, are not eligible to participate in the S-rank Magister assessment. Ha 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 ha. Lacuses looked at Gray and Leon's excitement, the corners of his mouth slightly raised. So Lacuses stood in front of Gray and Leon, taunted them loudly, and then walked away with a satisfied expression on his face, laughing loudly. I really want to crush him. The veins on Gray's and Leon's foreheads tensed up, and the corners of their eyes twitched slightly. Ah, by the way, Gray, your women's clothes are really good, at least better than when you don't wear clothes. Ha 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 ha. Lacuses, who walked to the door, seemed to think of something. He turned his head to look at Gray, and smiled. Forehead. Gray, don't be angry, Lacuses has always been like this. Kana smiled at Gray and Leon, persuading them. Lacuses, he. However, what Kana didn't expect was that Gray wasn't angry, but a dazzling light flashed in his eyes. He remembered my name, Gray murmured, feeling very emotional in his heart. At the same time, he clenched his fists, thinking that his hard work these days was worth it. After hearing Gray's words, Kana was stunned for a moment, and then she understood. It seems that Lacuses has never called Gray's name before, and has always been called a kid. Today, it is the first time Lacuses called Gray's name. By the way, speaking of it, what is an S-level Magister assessment? Gray kept staring at Lacuses until the other party disappeared, then he thought of something, turned his head to look at Kana and asked. Forehead. Hee. Kana was taken aback after hearing Gray's words, and then smiled wryly, thinking, so Gray and Leon still don't know the meaning of the S-level exam. First of all, before you understand Fairy Tale's S-level Magister assessment, you must first know what an S-level Magister is. Kana decided to explain the S-class Magister to Gray and Leon. Oh, Leon nodded slightly, then looked at Kana seriously and asked, then what is Kana an S-rank Magister? S-level Magisters are the strongest Magisters in the guild. They are different from ordinary Magisters. S-level Magisters are all experienced and strong, and they can also accept S-level tasks that are above ordinary tasks. Kana said this, and brought Gray and Leon to the task board on the first floor. Look, this is the Kanban for us to accept tasks on weekdays. All the tasks here are ordinary tasks, and there are more difficult and higher risk factors on top of this. Ordinary magisters will kill you if you execute them at will. Dangerous tasks, those tasks that ordinary magisters cannot complete, are S-level quests. And magisters who handle these tasks that ordinary magisters cannot complete at all are S-level magisters. The S-level missions of our fairy tale are not placed on the task board on the first floor, but on the task board on the second floor. On the second floor of the fairy tale guild, only S-level magisters can go up. Yes, a very dangerous place. Kana took a deep breath, and told Gray and Leon what the S-level mission was and what the S-level magister was for. Wow! When Gray and Leon heard this, little stars lit up in their eyes. By the way, currently, the only active S-rank mage in fairy tale is Gilda's. Kana looked at Gray and Leon, who had glowing eyes, smiled, and then spoke. Kana looked at Gray and Leon as if she saw herself when she first joined the guild, and it was the same when she heard the S-level magister assessment. At the same time, when Kana told Gray and Leon that Gilda's was the only active S-level magister in fairy tale, Kana felt a little proud in her heart. After all, the only S-level magister in that guild was her Karna's biological father. Is Gilda's the only S-rank magister in fairy tale? Gray and Leon looked at Karna in shock. Yes, now that President Makarov hardly does missions, Gilda's is the only S-rank magister in fairy tale. Karna nodded and replied, isn't even Brother Yen an S-level magister? In other words, if we can become an S-level magister, it means that we have not only surpassed Erza and Lakuz's, but also surpassed Yen. Gray and Leon looked at each other, and their hearts were surging. At the same time, a question arose in their hearts, that is, how to participate in the S-level magister assessment. Kana, how can we participate in fairy tale's S-rank magister assessment? So, Gray and Leon looked at Kana and asked, this. Even if you ask me how I can participate in fairy tale's S-rank magister assessment, I don't know either, because I haven't participated in. When talking about this moment, Kana seems to be a little regretful. In fact, she has been working hard towards the status of an S-rank mage, but there are too many monsters in fairy tale. Don't even you know? Gray and Leon looked at each other, and they seemed to feel the deep resentment in Kana's heart. Yes, I haven't participated in, because as long as you are selected and allowed to participate in the S-level assessment, you can default as the S-level magister backup in the guild. My strength has not yet reached the level where I can be selected as the S-level magister backup. Listening to the words of the two, Kana's resentment deepened. She also wanted to take part in the S-rank magister assessment, pass the assessment successfully, and recognize her father, Gilda's. But she is not strong enough. There's nothing she can do. Besides, those people in the guild who are allowed to participate in the S-level assessment are all too abnormal in strength, right? That's beyond the scope of an S-rank magister, right? Thinking of this, Karna couldn't help but smiled wryly. However, although I don't know what the criteria for participating in fairy tale's S-level magister assessment are, but you can see that the members in the guild will do a lot of tasks every time they reach the S-level examination stage. I think the president candidates for fairy tale's S-level magister assessment will be determined based on the completion of each year's tasks, right? Anyway, the amount of tasks completed each year and the evaluation of the final completed task must be one of the conditions leading to the S-level assessment 1. Besides, among our guild, there are several candidates who can participate in the S-level assessment. I can probably be sure. After just a few seconds, Karna regained her composure and smiled slightly at Gray and Leon. Really? Then who in our guild can participate in the S-level magister assessment? Gray and Leon asked excitedly after listening to Kana's words. First of all, it is the person recognized by the guild this year who is most likely to pass the S-rank magister assessment, that is, the so-called number 1 seed. Yen Bersarian. However, rather than saying that he is the number 1 seed who passed the S-level magister assessment, it is better to say that he is a member of the S-level magisters in the guild. In fact, apart from not having an S-rank status, he has all the abilities and rights of an S-rank magister. He can even accept S-rank missions at will. The default thing for guild members. I think he is probably the only one in the guild who is not an S-level magister, but can accept S-level tasks. As Kana said, she looked at Yen, who had secretly jumped down from the second floor of the guild after accepting the S-level mission. As Yen turned into light and left the guild in an instant, Makarov's roar came from the second floor of the guild. Yen. Don't take all the S-level crusade missions at once. You have done them all. What about the other people in the guild? Apart from some doing her own way, Yen is probably the most comprehensive magister in the entire guild, right? Kana looked at Yen, who had angered Makarov, and smiled wryly. As she spoke, even Kana herself lost all confidence. How should I put it, in their fairy tale guild, these S-rank magister backups have quite individual personalities. Brother Yen's strength, we understand. Gray nodded. He had experienced Egwene's strength before, and it was the first time he had seen it so far. In order to prevent an avalanche in the snow mountain, someone directly evaporated all the snow on the snow mountain into water vapor. The so-called once and for all. Okay, Leon agreed with what Gray had said, that Egwene was nothing short of a monster. And then there is your master, the woman who has already won the title of the top 10 magisters, the Ice Magister Ulu Marukobichi. To be honest, Ulu is already the top 10 magisters, even if she directly it's okay to give her the title of S-rank magister, right? However, it seems that the president insisted on yelling about traditions, and did not award Ulu the title of S-class, so that Ulu has to participate in this year's S-class magister assessment like everyone else. Kana continued, and at the same time she looked around, looking for Ulu, but Ulu seemed to have something to do and left the guild. Kana did not find Ulu. Uru is the strongest. As soon as Gray and Leon heard Kana talk about Ulu, they immediately became excited. In their minds, their teacher will always be the strongest magister. Except for Yen and Ulu who have the strength of S-level magisters, or even higher than S-level magisters, the most likely to become S-level magisters are probably Erza and Lakuzes. The strength of these two people, I think you two should have experienced it. Kana then talked about Erza and Lakuzes. As for the strength of Erza and Lakuzes, Kana did not say much, because she believed that Gray and Leon knew Erza and Lakuza better than she did. The power of Sass. Aluza. As soon as Leon heard Erza's name, he suddenly felt his body start to ache again. At the same time, Leon recalled in his mind Erza's shocking blow that instantly killed him. Lakuzes. When Gray thought of the thunder and lightning from Lakuzes, his body suddenly became numb involuntarily. Obviously, Gray and Leon have already felt the power of Lakuzes and Erza with their own bodies. In the eyes of Gray and Leon, Lakuzes and Erza are monsters. I think the above 4 people will be the ones who will take the S-level magister exam. To put it bluntly, the above 4 people are a bunch of monsters. In other guilds, they have already become S-level magisters. When Kana said this, she couldn't help complaining that the S-level magister assessment in her guild was too strict. Whether it was Ulu or Yen, in other guilds, she had already been promoted to an S-level magister. As the secret weapon of the guild, it also serves as a live signboard, and it's like a big man offering it up. Even Lakuzes and Erza, in other guilds, can already have the title of S-class magister, but in Fairy Tale, with the strength of Lakuzes and Erza, they are even basically comparable to this guild. This year's S-class magister title was missed, which made Kana feel emotional, and at the same time, her heart was extremely entangled. On the one hand, she was happy to see her guild being strong, and on the other hand, with these monsters, when could she become an S-class magister? Mentor, and then recognize your father. Of course, if there is only one person who can win the S-level exam this year, then there is no doubt that it will be Yen. Karna paused for a while before continuing to preach. In Kana's eyes, the people who can take the S-level exam are undoubtedly Yen, Wulu, Lakuzes, and Erza. If only one of the 4 can be selected to become an S-level magister, then there is no doubt that it must be Yen, because in Kana's eyes, among the 4 people who are very likely to take the S-level exam, among them, Yen, who can have a brief confrontation with Kildas, is the most popular among them all. The strong one. Will Yen be the one who finally gets the S-rank magister qualification? Gray and Leon looked at each other, and then they were a little disappointed. They still hoped that their teacher, that is, Uru, could pass the S-level magister assessment of Fairy Tale. No, I'm just saying it's possible. No one will know the final result until the exam is over. Kana looked at Gray and Leon, who were serious, and waved her hands again and again. These were just her guesses. How about this? Why don't I do the math for you guys, do a good fortune telling, and see who will become an S-rank magister this year? Then, Kana looked at Gray and Leon, who were disappointed with their eyes, and kindly took out the cards for divination. Oh, upon hearing this, Gray and Leon fixed their eyes on the magic card in Kana's hand. The person who can eventually become an S-rank magister is. Kana first put the cards in front of her, then closed her eyes, chanted a spell, and then gently flipped open one of the cards on the back. Forehead. Kana opened her eyes, staring at the result displayed on the card for a moment. Kana, what's the final result? Gray and Leon looked at Kana anxiously and asked. Maybe my divination was wrong. After hearing Gray and Leon's question, Kana smiled a little guilty. Even if it's a wrong result, just tell me. Gray looked at Kana anxiously. Even if it was a wrong result, he would really like to hear it. Yes, Kana. The same is true for Leon. In fact, it was okay for Kana not to do divination, and they would not be curious. Now that Kana has performed the divination, they can't help being curious in their hearts, and they really want to know the result, no matter whether the result is correct or not. Okay, there's really nothing you can do. Kana smiled helplessly after hearing what Gray and Leon said, and then watched the two tell the result of divination. My divination shows that this year's Fairy Tale S-class magister, the person who passed the assessment, is neither Yen nor Wooloo. Kana's divination couldn't be accurate. What she predicted was the winner of this year's Fairy Tale S-level magister assessment, and the final result was completely different from what Kana thought in her heart. Leon and Gray's eyes widened immediately after listening to Kana's words. No way. Could it be that Erza or Lakuz's passed the assessment of the S-level magister? What will this year's assessment be? Anyway, it shouldn't be a competition, otherwise, how could Yen and Wooloo lose? Gray and Leon discussed after hearing the results of Kana's divination. Forehead. Just listen to it. The result of my divination may not be correct. Kana looked at Gray and Leon, who were discussing together, and smiled awkwardly. To be honest, she didn't believe the result of this divination. In Kana's eyes, this year's S-rank magister is definitely a choice between Yen and Wooloo, and there is no other possibility. Unknown, deep in the woods, in this dark corner without sunlight, a dark magister guild called the Fangs of the Snake was established here. Ha ha ha. Drink, brothers. I heard that you killed a few from the Bright Guild. That's, the babies of the Bright Guild. How could they be our opponents? In the guild, a group of magisters from the Dark Guild drank heavily and sang songs. Then they chatted leisurely, mostly talking about some things in the magic world, such as who is so powerful, who killed a certain powerful magister from the so-and-so Bright Guild, and so on. Hee. In the deepest part of the guild, a tall and thin man looked at the members of his guild, drinking wine calmly. He is the president of the guild, and he is also an S-class criminal who was rewarded by the Magic Council. At this moment, he looked at the incomparably prosperous scene of hundreds of people drinking and chatting in front of him, and his heart jumped with joy. This is the guild he has spent several years of energy to form with one hand, and it is precisely because he has not only impressive strength, but also because of being the boss of hundreds of magisters, he can have his own place in the dark magic world. Take time to destroy a certain Guangming guild and have fun. Raising soldiers for 1,000 days and using them for a while. It's also time to let these little devils bleed for me. While drinking, the tall and thin man looked at his subordinates, thinking. I heard that Fairy Tale has been in the limelight recently, and even that idiot Kafshe has been defeated by Fairy Tale. Why don't we just use him for surgery? If I kill them, maybe I will completely become famous in the magic world. It's time to stand 10,000, maybe you can get the appreciation of that adult. He. The tall and thin man thought about it, then smiled evilly and made a series of creepy sounds. Call out, call. Just as the thin and tall man was thinking about whether to take the Fairy Tale knife, his sharp ears moved slightly, and with his amazing hearing, he caught a whistling sound. Okay. The tall and thin man was taken aback for a moment. He raised his head subconsciously, and looked at the ceiling above his head. Is something coming? The tall and thin man narrowed his eyes, but he didn't take it seriously. After all, this was his guild, so what danger could there be? Could it be that a meteorite fell from the sky and hit him? Just when this thin and tall man was thinking so, in the next second, the hundreds of square meter ceiling of their guild shattered instantly, revealing a huge rock burning with flames. Shouldn't it be? The moment the tall and thin man looked at the rock, his pupils trembled. He subconsciously used his strongest defensive magic, but it was too late. Boom! Accompanied by a roar, the entire Dark Guild Gangsnike's Fang and its 137 members were all conquered by this overbearing power. In the sky, a young man stood quietly out of thin air like this. He looked at the ruined guild below him, took out a reward list from the backpack behind him, and ticked it lightly. S-level crusade mission. The mission to crusade against the fangs of the Dark Guild snake is completed. The young man whispered to himself. After confirming that all the fangs of the snake had been attacked, he directly notified the soldiers of the nearby Magic Council to clean up the scene, and then he turned into a golden light and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Heaven. A few hours later, a group of soldiers from the Magic Senate just arrived. What? Can humans do this? Whose handwriting is it? When a group of soldiers looked at the guild that had been turned into a deep pit by a huge meteorite, and the members of the Dark Guild who were unconscious, their eyes widened. Ha! One of the older-looking soldiers of the Magic Council looked at the miserable appearance of the Dark Magisters in front of him, took out a bong from his arms, and took a deep puff, while speaking to the recruits beside him. This is already the 7th Dark Magister Guild destroyed by a meteorite this month. As for the person who destroyed them, there is no mistake, it is the fairy tale member. Magister Yen, known as Crash Star. In the legend, do you like a Gwaine who destroys all enemies with real celestial magic? I heard that the opponents who fought with that Egwene will not end well. The miserable appearance is comparable to that of the smashing magician who is known as the strongest in the West, Kildas. There is no good meat on his body. When a soldier heard this, he immediately preached in shock. Ha! Stop talking nonsense, you guys move this meteorite away with all your strength, the people who are under the pressure at this moment will die after a while. The veteran looked at the meteorite just in front of him that pressed all the magisters of the Dark Guild under him, and opened his mouth to spit out another cloud of white smoke. In the eyes of the veteran, that Egwene is very ghost. The other party maimed everyone but did not kill anyone. After the crusade against the Dark Guild, it will immediately notify the Magic Council, so that the Magic Council can also have an extra share. Merit. This made all the congressmen who were very irritable towards Yen lose their temper. After all, performance matters. You must know that the magisters of these dark guilds were arrested by their Magic Council. That Yen's control over celestial magic is getting stronger and stronger. He can actually manipulate the meteorite and destroy the guild without affecting the surrounding area. It's a complete monster. With the speed of his destruction of the Dark Magister, plus this precise, not destroying the surrounding manipulative techniques, next year's top 10 Holy Magisters will definitely be him. The veteran was thoughtful. Based on his experience, the current Yen has a 90% chance of winning the position of the top 10 Magisters next year. At that time, including Makarov and Ulu who became the Holy 10 this year, there are 3 Holy 10s in one guild. Then count the reclusive senior. By then, there will be nothing in the entire Ishgar continent that can stop Fairy Tale from advancing. Forget it, it's none of my business anyway. The veteran sighed, and then he stopped thinking about these things, because these things have nothing to do with him as a small soldier captain, and they are things that the members of the council should worry about. At the same time, in the mountains about 80 kilometers away from the Dark Guild Gangsnike's Fangs. Roar! A huge orc the size of a mountain, wearing animal skins and holding a wooden club, was roaring towards a caravan of about 30 people. Oops! It's a wild giant. The guards of the caravan looked at the huge roaring monsters in front of them, and they were sweating wildly. The only wild giants with a height of more than 30 meters and super high magic resistance in front of them were the S-level magisters in the Bright Magic Guild. They are just ordinary guards who know a little about magic, and they are not the opponents of the giants in front of them at all. Boom! Just when the guards were panicking, the giant moved, and he quickly swung the stick in his hand, knocking the 5 guards into the air in an instant, and landed on the rocky mountain aside. Those guards who were blown away were bloody. Run away with Miss. The middle-aged man who looked like the captain of the guard, when he saw the giant in front of him that could kill 5 of them with one blow, cold sweat continued to flow down his neck, but as a knight, he still ordered the guards behind them protect their employers from escaping. After all, it is the duty of these guards to protect the safety of their employers. Boss, what do you do if we run away? The guards heard the words, looked at the middle-aged chief guard, and asked. I'm holding him here. The middle-aged head guard took out his iron sword and pointed it at the giant in front of him. He gritted his teeth and tensed his nerves. Although the giant in front of him made his scalp feel numb, the responsibilities on his body prevented him from being alone. Leave. Boss, don't. After hearing what the chief guard said, the guards burst into tears and shouted unwillingly. Go. This is an order. The chief guard turned around and looked at his brothers roaring. Even he had no confidence to delay. How long would it take for the monster in front of him? If not, the consequences will be unimaginable. However, it was precisely this moment of turning around that the giant seemed to have found an opportunity, and he moved. Boom! I saw the giant swinging his huge wooden club, and with the howling wind, he swung it towards the captain of the guard who was facing him, and dared to lose his mind for a short time. Ahem! The head of the guard's face changed when he heard the whistling of the wind. In his haste, he had no time to defend himself. He was hit by the giant's stick and fell to his knees. Distraction is the last thing you should do in a battle. I actually made such a low-level mistake, it's really infuriating. Now I'm doomed. The bodyguard went numb. He looked at the giant in front of him and sighed. He seemed to have seen his own destiny. Boss, we fought him. The guards behind the chief guard, seeing the huge giant and the injured boss, drew their weapons one after another, preparing to fight the giant to the death. Idiot, I told you not to come here. Take the lady and run away. The chief guard looked at the guards who were about to come to die, and his expression panicked. The most taboo thing for a guard is excitement, and he forgot to protect his employer. Although he knew that his brothers were all for him, but in terms of duties, these idiots are all unqualified. The duty of the guard is to calmly judge the risk, avoid the risk, and escape with the employer. Roar! Just as the chief guard was roaring, the wild giant seemed to be angry. He seemed to regard the chief guard's roar as a provocation to him. The chief guard smashed it away. Do not. The guards looked at the scene in front of them, their eyes were red, they were heartbroken but they were unable to stop it. Call out. Just as the chief guard had resigned to his fate, and the group of novice guards were roaring helplessly, a golden light shone. It passed directly through the giant's chest, and then landed on a high mountain in the distance. Boom! Accompanied by a roar, the peak of the high mountain disappeared without a trace in an instant. Plop! At the same time, accompanied by a roar, the majestic giant who was originally holding a wooden club lost his vital signs in an instant, and fell towards the head of the guard below him, pressing the head of the guard under him. Boss! Although the group of novice guards didn't know what happened, they saw the giant's body hit the body of the chief guard, and they immediately became nervous and shouted at their boss. No, I'm fine. Just when the novice guards didn't know how the chief guard was doing and what happened, the group of novice guards heard the chief guard's voice. A middle-aged man stained red with blood emerged from the giant's body. That man is the chief of guards. Boss killed the giant. A group of guards were shocked when they saw the head of the guard who was stained red with blood, and they shouted excitedly in the next second. If their boss can even kill that kind of monster-like giant, then their guards won't go up. It's a pity what they don't know is that at this moment, the chief guard is already thinking about driving all these fools back to retrain. No, I didn't do it. The head of the guard shook his head after listening to the words of the younger brothers. He was stunned when he saw the giant fall towards him. Just when he thought he was going to die, he realized that the giant's chest had unexpectedly turned. There was a big hole more than 2 meters wide, and his body just passed through the middle of that big hole. Apart from being splashed with the blood of a giant, he didn't suffer any injuries. As for how the giant died, the chief guard vaguely seemed to see a golden light flashing. The chief guard guessed that it must have something to do with the sudden flashing golden light. Successful crusade against wild giants. Just as the chief guard and the other guards were at a loss, there seemed to be a voice in the sky. When all the guards looked in the direction of the sound, their pupils shrank suddenly. Just because they saw a scene that they will never forget in their lifetime. I saw countless golden rays of light converging, first the mouth, hands, then half the body, and then the whole body. In the blink of an eye, a young man formed of golden rays of light stood in the sky like this. Your Excellency is. The chief guard looked at the young man, and he knew in his heart that the young man in front of him was definitely a top magister on the continent of Ishgar, at least an S-level magister of the Guild of Light, or even one of the top 10 holy magisters, a member of. The young man seemed to have noticed the guards. He stretched out his fingers and pointed at the guards who hit the rock mass and bled profusely. His lips moved slightly. Additional hemostasis. Additional recovery. As 2 additional spells were released from the boy's fingertips. The 5 soldiers who were blown away by the giant's stick before, and the head of the guard who had suffered the giant's blow, were all shaken, and they recovered in a blink of an eye. It's so amazing. After the chief guard felt his restored body, he looked at the boy in the air with shock in his eyes. The boy's additional magic was called a miracle. The front is very dangerous, and your strength is not enough, so go back wherever you came from. After the boy finished speaking, without giving the guards a chance to speak, he turned into a golden light and disappeared into the sky in a blink of an eye. Not long after the boy left, the small curtain on the window of the carriage protected by the guards was gently pulled up, revealing a young girl with an exquisite face, but the most striking thing was the short emerald hair of the girl. Grand Miss, sorry for shocking you. It's the incompetence of the subordinates. When the chief guard saw the girl, he immediately moved in front of him, knelt down on one knee, and sincerely apologized. Who's that person? The girl ignored the chief guard's apology, but looked at the sky and asked. Okay, although I don't know who he is, I can recognize the symbol on the back of that boy's hand. It is the symbol of the fairy tale of the Magisters Guild. According to my guess, he is probably the Magister of Fairy Tale who has become famous in the mainland recently, Yen from Crash Star. The chief guard thought for a while before speaking softly. Is it Egwene from Fairy Tale's Magister, Crash Star? I remember the name. Hearing this, the girl murmured Yen's name softly. The chief guard looked at the girl with twinkling eyes, and slowly breathed a sigh of relief. The identity of the girl in front of him was beyond words. If something happened, it would not only be his death, but the entire guard team would also die together. At the same time, the chief guard decided to strengthen the education of these young guards in the future. We must let this group of guards know that the job of the guards is to protect. Whenever they encounter danger, they must protect their employers and get out of the body, instead of acting recklessly. Fortunately, I met a top magister on the mainland today, and I barely escaped, but next time I may not have such good luck. Thinking of this, the middle-aged chief guard frowned. A few days later, Yen, who traveled abroad for almost a month, returned to the Fairy Tale Guild. In just 1 month, he has completed 1 SS-level mission, 9 S-level missions, and 43 A-level missions. These 53 missions, without exception, are all crusade missions. As for why it took Yen a month to complete only 53 quests, it wasn't that he could only do 53 quests. This was far from his limit, but because there were only so many quests in Fairy Tale. Egwene has been backlogging Fairy Tale for a year. More difficult, no one to do crusade missions, all cleared up. The rest of the tasks are all tasks that Yen despises and require a lot of time, such as investigation tasks, ancient text translation tasks. Or some weird ones, such as going to the theater to perform, drawing pictures for others, helping the flower shop to investigate the reason why the flowers withered, etc., all kinds of tasks that Yen couldn't understand. Counting the 10-year medal he obtained for the crusade against Daliola, the S-class medal he obtained for the crusade mission he completed with Kildas, and the SS medal he obtained for the Fairy Tale 24-hour endurance race, he now won 10-year medal, 2 SS-level mission medals, 10 S-level mission medals, and 43 A-level medals. Yen didn't hesitate much, and directly merged the 43 A-level medals into 4 S-level medals and 3 A-level medals, so that he had a total of 14 S-level medals, and then he added 10 S-rank medals or combined into 1 SS rank medal. In this way, he has a full 3 SS rank medals. Yen looked at the medals in front of her, and directly used the 3 SS level medals to upgrade. 3 SS level medals were used to upgrade Yen's magic power, separation magic and additional magic respectively. In an instant, these 3 abilities of Yen went from level 8 to level 9. That is to say, in just a short moment, these 3 abilities of Yen directly came to the level of the 4 heavenly kings of Ishgar, and the last 3, that is, the inhuman level. Then Yen used her 10-year mission medal and directly upgraded her magic power to level 10. In a blink of an eye, Yen's magic power has directly reached the level of the 12 shields. That is to say, in terms of magic power, even if she is placed in the Western continent, Yen can still be selected as one of the 12 shields of Jareth's personal guardian. Yes, although it is only at the lower level of the 12 shields, in terms of comprehensiveness, except for the fact that there is a certain gap between Yen and the shield level in magic, other aspects are stronger than the single shield level. But no matter what, the current Yen is not only in the Ishgar continent, but also in the whole world, including the Western continent, and the Alvarez Empire founded by Jareth too can be called a leader. A strong and powerful man. Then, Yen upgraded her remaining 4S level medals and all the funds on her body to resistance, and upgraded all his resistance to level 8. In an instant, Yen's data template was corrected to Character: Yen. Physique: Special Constitution, can eat multiple devil fruits. Domineering. Knowledge color: LV8+. Armed color: LV8+. Overlord color: LV8+. Devil fruit. Animals: fish fruit, phantom beasts, blue dragon form, LV8+. Destroy evil, Superman series heavy fruits, LV8+. Natural department sparkling fruit, LV8+. Gymnastics. Swordsmanship, LV8+. 6 types, LV8+. Magic, LV10+. Additional magic, LV9+. Separation magic, LV9+. Resistance. Poison resistance, LV8+. Illusion resistance, LV8+. Elemental resistance, LV8+. Time resistance, LV8+. Space resistance, LV8+. Funding: 127,000. Medals: 3A level. All of a sudden, the resources that Yen had accumulated over such a long period of time had bottomed out. Call: now I can easily handle the assessment of Fairy Tail's S-rank Magister. Yen looked at her data and sighed helplessly. The speed of upgrading is still too slow. Yen had a headache. There were only a few 10-year quests in the guild. Except for the crusade against Daliola, they were all quests to explore the ruins. The time it took was unimaginable for Yen. For the remaining crusade missions, there are C-level or D-level crusade missions. But Yen didn't like it. There were too few mosquito legs, and it took 1,000 C-levels to synthesize one S-level, which was not enough to feed. As for B-level, Yen left the task of B-level to Erza and the others. As for what Yen likes, at least A-level or above crusade missions are required, but even if Yen suppressed the area in the guild for a year, and completed all the more difficult crusade missions, she only collected one SS-level crusade mission. Medals, as well as a dozen S-level medals, and sporadic A-level medals, at this rate. In X784, that is, after the start of the plot, Yen couldn't get together a medal of the 100-year mission level, and she didn't even know if she could reach level 10 with all attributes. Unless Yen abolishes all the attributes and invests them all in one attribute, the resources in it can be enough to gather a 100-year mission medal, so that one of Yen's abilities can reach level 11, that is, Irene and the Magic King below Olgast, the front level of the shield level. However, a single attribute at level 11 is useless. Irene and the Magic King don't talk about magic. As far as the magic power is concerned, if Yen calculates according to the current increase between each level, the magic power of Irene and the Magic King is far away. Far above the 11th level. There is more than one level difference between Irene and the Magic King and other shield levels. For them, the other 12 shields are no different from ordinary magisters in their eyes. In the words of Brandish, the only one who can defeat Xuangbi is Xuangbi himself. No matter how many others go, it is useless. Yen still remembered that before he crossed over, there was a joke describing the 12 shields like this: Irene and Olgast were responsible for protecting the saints, and the other 10 were responsible for squatting in front to form shields. As for the strength of the Black Dragon in the finale, according to Yen's guess, it may be even more exaggerated. Regarding this, Yen could only complain silently in her heart. So why is Fairy Tail's combat power in the late stage so exaggerated? It's completely out of touch with the early stage, hey. After complaining, Yen slowly calmed down. For the future, he can only think of a way. He has more important things to do now. That is to become a Fairy Tale S-class Magister. Just because at this moment Yi Wen's system has released a brand new mission. Pass the Fairy Tale S-level Magister assessment, become a glorious S-level Magister, and reward a 10-year mission medal. Yi Wen breathed out slowly, his eyes were firm, and with his current strength, no matter what changes occurred in this year's Fairy Tale S-level Magister assessment, he would definitely be able to win it smoothly. At this point, Yi Wen returned to the guild full of confidence, waiting for the start of the S-rank Magister assessment. As for how to become stronger in the future, Yi Wen has decided that starting today, his scope of activities will expand from the Kingdom of Fury to the entire continent of Ishgar. Since Fairy Tale's guild's quests can't meet his demand for Egwene to become stronger, then he, Egwene, will go to grab quests from other guilds. While investigating the matter of the paradise, while helping other guilds, all the tasks that have been backlogged for a long time have been completed. There are also some props that can be used to strengthen oneself in the original book, and Yi Wen will not let go of any of them. That is to say, Yi Wen intends to use all the resources of the entire Ishgal continent to help her grow. Including attributes such as Devil Fruit ability and Domineering, Yi Wen will break the limit of these abilities one by one. Yes, the reason why the Domineering and Devil Fruit abilities on Yi Wen's panel are at level 10 is because this level 10 is the limit that Yi Wen can reach. It is not the limit of these abilities. With regard to this limit, Yi Wen can break it through some methods in the Fairy Tale world. In order to obtain a stronger room for improvement. Since the Gravity Fruit can indeed serve as the core of magic similar to the Dragon Slayer magic crystal, accept the power of the devil and gain the power to slay the devil. In the same way, the Glitter Fruit and the Azure Dragon Fruit can also become the core of magic, and it is right to obtain the power of the Extinguishing attribute, which is the power of Extinguishing God and Extinguishing Dragon. When Domineering, Physical Skills, Devil Fruit ability, and the 3 types of attribute destroying magic merged into one, Yi Wen didn't believe that he could not defeat the all-devouring Xiao He. Then come on, S-level assessment. Thinking so, Yi Wen pushed open the door of the Fairy Tale Guild and walked into it. The first thing Yi Wen has to do now is the assessment of the Fairy Tale S-rank Magister with the 10-year mission medal as a reward. This is close at hand for Yi Wen, an opportunity to improve herself. Early morning, among the Fairy Tale Guild. The atmosphere of this day is extraordinarily serious. Makarov, the 3rd-generation president of Fairy Tale, was wearing a cloak of the Holy Cross, standing on the podium in the Hall of Fairy Tale, looking seriously at the Magisters of Fairy Tale below him, them. Is it my illusion? It feels like there are more people coming back today than during the Harvest Festival. Gray and Leon stood among the crowd, looking around. The Fairy Tale Magisters that covered the hall murmured softly. Because there are some people who have been practicing outside, even the Harvest Festival did not come back. Everyone has tried their best for the S-level exam. Macau stood beside Gray and Leon, preaching. It seems that everyone is more serious about the S-level exam than I imagined. After hearing what Macau said, Gray's face became a little more serious. He only now understands the significance of the S-rank Magister assessment. The assessment of S-level Magisters is a grand event that half-baked Magisters will never be able to participate in. Ahem, since everyone is here, I think you all know what I'm going to say next, and you probably can't wait any longer. Then here I am, announcing the candidates for this S-rank Magister assessment. Makarov looked at the people below him with a serious face after he was almost done with the people coming. He cleared his throat and began to recall the names of the participants in this year's Fairy Tale S-class Magister examination. First of all, I am the first candidate to participate in this year's S-level Magister assessment. Let us congratulate Yuan Bersarian who just joined this year. The first person in Makarov's S-rank Magister assessment list this year is Yi Wen. It's Egwene, although I'm very unwilling, but since it's Yi Wen, there's nothing I can do. Yeah. All the Magisters in the guild showed relieved expressions when they heard that Yi Wen was going to participate in this year's S-level Magister assessment. After all, Yi Wen's achievements are based on real fights, and the Magisters of Fairy Tale all know Yi Wen's strength in their hearts. Even now that Makarov directly grants Egwene the S-rank Magister certification, the members of Fairy Tale will not say anything, they will only take it for granted. Quote. After hearing Makarov's words, Yen looked extremely calm, and she didn't seem to feel any surprise, and stood on the podium. For him, he is bound to win the S-rank Magister assessment this time. Following that, the second person to participate in this year's S-level Magister assessment is also a newcomer who just joined this year. Once he joins the membership, he will immediately obtain the certification of the top 10 Holy Magisters awarded by the Magic Council. It is Ulu Miru Beach. After Egwin came to him, Makarov read out the second candidate on the list to participate in the S-rank Magister assessment. It really is Uru. Hey, after all, he is the top 10 Holy Magisters. Ha ha ha, to be honest, I'm a little lucky. I'm glad that I was not selected to participate in this year's S-rank Magister assessment. I don't have to compete with monsters like Yen or Ulu. It's really great. Haha, that's right. It's really unfortunate for those who participated in the same S-class Magister assessment as such monsters. Everyone has nothing to say about Ulu's selection. After all, Ulu is one of the top 10 Holy Magisters together with their president. Great, Uru is selected. When Gray and Leon heard Makarov pronounce Uru's name, they immediately clapped hands in celebration. Next, the third and fourth candidates to participate in this year's S-level Magister assessment are Erza Bersarian and Lakuz's Dolea. Immediately afterwards, before Gray and Leon ran to Ulu to celebrate, everyone heard Makarov on the platform read out the third and fourth candidates for this year's S-level Magister assessment. Oh, it's Erza and Lakuz's. Haha, this is also expected. After all, they wiped out the entire Dark Guild with only 2 people. The group of Magisters showed no surprise when they heard that the third and fourth places to participate in this year's S-level Magister assessment. The strength of Erza and Lakuz's has been shown to everyone during the conflict between Fairy Tail and the Dark Magisters Guild's Dark Night Walk. That's just 2 people, who can single out the opponent's entire guild's Magister, plus the powerful combat power of a Dark Guild leader with the strength of an S-level bounty offender. With the level of strength that 2 people can annihilate the Dark Guild, it is only natural to participate in the S-level assessment. Although Erza and Lakuz's are still very young, everyone in Fairy Tail will not doubt the strength of Erza and Lakuz's. Leon, Erza seems to be about the same age as us, and she's only about 10 years old this year. When we are 10 years old, we will also take part in the Fairy Tail S-rank Magister assessment just like Erza. As Ulu's disciples, we must not lag behind. Gray looked at Erza, who was standing next to Makarov and was a backup for an S-rank Magister, and his blood boiled in his heart. Yes, Leon nodded, he will continue to hone his strength, and one day, by virtue of his own strength, he will be able to obtain the ability to participate in Fairy Tail's S-rank Magister assessment. However, the people participating in the S-level assessment right now are exactly as Kana said, Yen, Lakuz's, Erza, and Ulu. The 4 of them are really not bad at all. Sure enough, Kana, you are very good. Quote. Gray looked at Yen, Ulu, Erza, and Lakuz's who were standing beside Makarov, and spoke softly to Kana who was standing not far from him. Ah, hee, I'm just a little bit better at predicting. But I'm just better at predicting. After listening to Gray's words, Kana turned her head and smiled, but her clenched fist showed how unwilling she was not to be selected to participate in this S-rank Magister assessment. After all, Kana planned to reveal her identity to her father, Kilda's, after she became an S-rank Magister. Then there is the 5th candidate who will participate in this year's S-class Magister assessment. Just when Kana was extremely unwilling, she heard Makarov who was standing on the podium speak again. Okay, following Makarov's opening, the Magisters of Fairy Tail raised their heads one after another, their expressions filled with shock. Yes, originally they thought that there should only be so many people participating in the S-class Magister assessment this year, but now it seems. In this year's S-level Magister assessment, apart from Yen, Erza, Lakuz's, and Ulu, there is actually a 5th person participating. Hey, who will be the 5th person to participate in the S-level assessment? You said, is there such a possibility that I am the 5th person to participate in the S-level Magister assessment this year? Haha, you have a good idea. With your strength, you also want to participate in the S-level Magister assessment. If you can go, then I can too. A group of Magisters under the Fairy Tail stands had a heated discussion. At the same time, a group of fairy tale members who originally thought that they had no hope of participating in this year's S-level assessment were eager to try and showed Makarov in the stands. With their strength. For them, participating in the S-level Magister assessment this year, whether they can pass the assessment and obtain the S-level certification is not so important. Participate in the S-level Magister assessment. In this way, even if they fail, no one will say anything about it. On the contrary, it is an honor to lose. After all, they have competed with Yen and Ulu on the same stage. How face-saving is that? Just as the fairy tale magisters under the stands were wondering, Yen and the others were also wondering in the stands. Who will the fifth person be? Gray, Leon, Kana, Mikau or Wakaba? Gray, Leon, and Kana have good talents, but they are too young. It is too early to participate in the S-level assessment. The strength of Wakaba and Mikau has reached the level where they can participate in A-level crusade missions alone, but there is still a long way to go before S-level. Yen stood on the stand, looked at the magisters below her, and kept shaking her head. In his opinion, there was still a long way to go for other people to join the S-level magisters. No matter who the fifth person is, I will beat him down unceremoniously. Lucuses is surrounded by lightning. He has practiced hard this month. As for the fifth candidate to participate in the S-level assessment of fairy tale that Makarov said, he doesn't care at all. In the eyes of this S-level assessment, there is only one biggest enemy, and that is Yen. The fifth person to participate in the S-level assessment. Although Erza and Ulu didn't speak, the thoughts in their minds were similar to Yen's. From their point of view, among the fairy tale members present, none of them had the ability to participate in this year's S-level assessment. Although everyone is very good, they are still too young. There is still a long way to go before the S-level certification. The last person who won the S-level Magister assessment this year may be a bit surprising, because this person is also a newcomer to the membership this year. At the same time, she was a blockbuster in this year's Fairy Tale 24 Hours Endurance competition and directly won the championship. Moreover, there is no one who has created fairy tale before, and it will be difficult for anyone to come later, the person who has recorded the 24-hour endurance race. Just as Yen and the others were confused, Makarov finally announced the last candidate to participate in the S-level assessment of fairy tale. No way. In fact, when Yen heard this, he had roughly guessed the identity of the last person to participate in this year's S-level assessment. Not only Yen, but almost everyone had vaguely guessed the identity of the fifth person. Yes, this person is Irene Bersarian. Seeing that the atmosphere was getting better, Makarov finally read out the name of the fifth person who participated in the S-rank assessment, which was Irene Bersarian. As for why Makarov gave Irene such a high evaluation, it is difficult to surpass his record in the 24-hour endurance race. The main reason is that Makarov is old and his reaction speed will become slower and slower. The speed of the timer will also become slower and slower, so the record Irene created this year may be the record that the fairy tale 24-hour endurance race will never surpass. What? Although Yen had already guessed the candidate, when he heard Makarov pronounce Irene's name, he was still stunned. He looked like he thought he heard it wrong. If Irene wanted to compete with them this year if the S-level magisters are assessed, then they are farts. Are you kidding me? Besides, Aaron, you haven't gone out to do missions in the year since you joined Fairy Tale, right? Except for the 24-hour endurance race, you haven't shown your strength yet. How did you get selected? Yen was puzzled. In fact, a few people in the guild where Irene won the 24-hour endurance race championship were not convinced, because they didn't even know how Irene won the championship. But even if Irene's championship quota is cancelled, the champion of Fairy Tale's first 24-hour endurance race will directly fall on the second-placed Yen. Erza, who was originally fourth, will directly fill her place and rise to third place, so there will still be two Bersarian families in the top three, and this will not change. So all the magisters of Fairy Tale didn't say anything, but now that Irene was selected by Makarov as a member of the S-level Magister assessment, no matter how you look at it, it's really suspicious. Don't guess. I recommended it. Just when Egwene was confused with the members of Fairy Tale, as a voice sounded it was the hideous face of Gildas that caught Egwene's eyes. I saw Gildas looked at Yen with a mean smile and said, "What's the matter, kid? There is a high probability that you will miss the qualification of an S-level Magister this year. Hey, what a pity." Ha 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 ha. Too bad, I wanted to laugh out loud. Uncle, it turned out that you did something good. Egwene watched the laughing Kildith's eyes twitch slightly. He now understands that the reason why Irene participated is entirely because of Kildith's revenge. This narrow-minded man. Sure enough, Gildas was just as the outside world said, except for his strength, he was a messy magister. Hey. Immediately afterwards, Yen saw Makarov, who was just like Kildas, with a smirk on his face. Apparently, besides Kildas's recommendation, Makarov, an old man, was also indispensable for Irene to participate in this year's assessment. Irene's participation seems to be intentional by the old man Makarov. No way, Yen. Irene's strength is indeed enough to participate in the S-level Magister assessment. According to her strength, she is absolutely capable to participate in the S-level assessment. It's really not that I want to target you. Only basic Erdas is alone. Makarov patted Yen on the shoulder and said with a smile, but Yen, maybe this is a good thing for you. After all, life should be bumpy and full of twists and turns. Overcome setbacks so that you can go further. Looking at Yen, Makarov sighed in his heart. In Makarov's eyes, Egwene was a piece of uncut jade, destined to shine brightly in the world in the future, but precisely because Yen was a piece of uncut jade, Makarov's husband hopes that she can carve it carefully, for fear that Yen will go the wrong way because of her excessive talent. After all, this world is huge, and there are countless existences stronger than Gildas. What if Yen, a genius who has never experienced failure, meets someone more talented than him, cannot accept the reality, and becomes depressed? This was exactly what Makarov was worried about. After all, Makarov didn't know that Egwene was having an affair. Hey, President, it was obviously the candidate that the two of us were discussing at the same time. How could you put all the responsibility on me? Gildas looked at the little old man in front of him who directly put all the blame on him, and sold Makarov backhandedly. This is plastic friendship. No wonder Lacuzes doesn't listen to you. Old man. The corners of Egwene's eyes twitched slightly. Although Egwene knew that Makarov said this, Makarov must have had his own considerations. As the president of Fairy Tale, Makarov was absolutely fair and just, without any problems, but he still, and greeted Makarov's father's teacher inwardly. After all, that one was known by Yen, who is still living in this world, Makarov's oldest elder. At the same time, in an uninhabited forest, a boy with short black hair and wearing what looked like an aboriginal costume suddenly sneezed loudly. Akyu. Akyu. Strange, does anyone still miss me in this era? The boy scratched the ends of his hair, looked at the light blue sky, and muttered to himself. Surrounding the boy, there are small animals that suddenly died one after another without knowing when. No, that thing came again. The young man's face changed. He looked at the dead creatures and withered flowers and plants all over the ground. A trace of sadness flashed in his eyes, and then he continued to walk towards the dark and deserted forest. Perhaps only a place where there is no one and no life is the final destination of the boy. The other side. What's wrong, Yen? Is it surprising? The fifth person participating in the assessment is my mother. Just as Egwene was staring at Makarov, a gentle voice sounded in Egwene's ear. Irene. Yen turned around, and saw Irene appearing behind Yen without knowing when. Speaking of which, how long has it been since our family of three traveled to the outer suburbs? I'm really looking forward to it. As Irene said, she pulled Yen and Erza into her arms, and spoke softly. It turns out that Irene regards Fairy Tale's S-level Magister assessment as a trip. No, to be precise, it turns out that the two fools, the president and Kildas, tricked Irene into participating in the assessment. But Irene was really deceived. Forget it, this kind of nervousness really fits Irene's personality, but Yen's head is very big, like a mess of paste, because as long as Irene participates, no matter what the assessment of the S-rank Magister is this year, no one else will have any chance at all. Although Yen really wanted to persuade Irene to participate in the assessment next year. However, when Yen saw Irene's happy smile, he took back what he was about to say. Yen sighed at this thought. He would just take part in the assessment next year at worst. Anyway, the task of the S-rank Magister assessment has always been here, and it can only be completed once. It makes no difference if it is completed sooner or later. Besides, He himself has all the privileges of an S-level magister, so even if he doesn't have the title of an S-level magister, it's no big deal. Wrong. Thinking like this, Yen suddenly thought of something, and he noticed something unusual. It stands to reason that with Irene participating in a mission with Irene as an opponent, it is definitely a century-old mission level. Even if everyone in Fairy Tail except Irene joins together, there is no chance of winning at all. It is a task that I am absolutely unable to complete with my current strength. But my reward is at the 10-year level, that is to say, there is a chance of winning. For a moment, Egwene seemed to be aware of a blind spot. Hee. Thinking of this, Yen smiled lightly. Since you are going to travel, you should prepare more food and water. Egwene looked at Irene and smiled, and said, "Oh, that's right, I'll bake the bread when I get back today." Irene nodded after listening to Yen's words. During the conversation between the two, they already regarded this year's S-level Magister assessment as a tourist. But that's not the case. In fact, it was Egwene who was paralyzing Gildas and Makarov. Okay, Gildas and Makarov, who watched Yen and Irene talking normally, felt puzzled. Could it be that this brat gave up on this year's S-level exam? Makarov looked at Egwene and thought silently. No, absolutely not. This kid Yen has the most ideas. Makarov suddenly had an ominous premonition in his heart. Just wait and see. I am sure to win this year's S-level assessment. Besides, who said that only one person can pass the annual assessment? As for the rules for the assessment of S-level magisters in the past, rules are meant to be broken. President Makarov said that. The corners of Yen's mouth raised slightly, and she thought to herself, it would be so cool to deal with Makarov with what Makarov taught him. Besides, when it comes to the rules, you should know that according to the rules of Fairy Tail, if you are raped by someone, you will be rewarded 100 times. Hiss. All of a sudden, Gildas and Makarov gasped, and they had an ominous premonition in their hearts. This year's S-rank Magister assessment might be extraordinarily lively. It's you guys who have to do things first. Yen stared at Gildas and Makarov, her mind racing. Since Gildas and Makarov are plotting against him together, don't blame his subordinates for being ruthless. He will make a big event this year. Irene, Yen, Erza. Will the whole family participate in this year's S-level Magister assessment? Hey, isn't this too exaggerated? What a powerful family this is. Ha ha ha, this is simply a family of monsters. Isn't it? Ha ha ha. The members of Fairy Tail looked at Irene, Yen, and Erza above the stands at this moment, and couldn't help being shocked. It was the first time for them to see the spectacular sight of a mother bringing her son and daughter to participate in the guild's S-level Magister together. You little devils, don't just know how to boo. Among the 5 Magisters participating in the S-level assessment this year, 4 of them are newcomers to the guild. You also work hard for me. Don't chat, drink, and watch girls in the guild all day. Standing on the podium, Makarov spoke to the old members below him with a look of hatred. No. President, what qualifications do you have to say about us? That's it. Aren't you drinking, chatting, and seeing girls in the guild all day long? Yeah, I saw you and Gildas peeking in the girls' dormitory with my own eyes. Makarov's words seemed to arouse public outrage, and a group of members yelled at Makarov. That's right. He saw you and Gildas peeking in the girls' dormitory with his own eyes. Huh, by the way, how did you see the president and Gildas go to the girls' dormitory with your own eyes? No, to be precise, what are you doing near the girls' dormitory? Someone seems to have discovered a blind spot. It just happened to happen. The speaker lowered his head in shame. Beat this scum. The leader spoke, but the others rushed forward. Forehead. Looking at the scene in front of him, Makarov and Gildas looked at each other, and then took half a step back at the same time. Ahem. According to the usual practice this year, the S-level Magister exam will be held on Sirius Island. Those who have been named to participate in the S-level Magister exam will gather at the pier tomorrow morning. The meeting will be adjourned. Looking at the furious crowd, Makarov felt something was wrong. He immediately announced that before this year's S-rank Magister assessment, the mobilization of all members of the guild was completely over, and then he turned around and ran away. He escaped with Gildas. Oh, I was not selected this year. No need to moan. Continue next year. Yes, we still won't be selected next year. It's too early to sigh now. If there are too many sighs this year, what will we do next year? There is nothing difficult in the world, as long as you are willing to give up. Instead of daydreaming, how about we bet on who will pass this year's S-level assessment? Hey, don't say it, although I can't participate in the competition, but take a gamble, I think I can do it. In an instant, a group of fairy tale magisters turned into fun people. What, you said work hard to do the task? For that kind of thing, you can work hard for at most 1 month in a year, and for the remaining 11 months, you can only live by chatting and spanking, so you can barely get by. In an instant, everyone in the fairy tale guild began to discuss who would pass the S-rank magister assessment this year. One thing to say, if you want to say who will become an S-rank magister this year, it must be Egwene. Let's say, including the president, who else besides Egwene can fight with that Kildeth that look? Macau directly bet on Yen. This time Macau took out all the funds on his body, and the bet was full. Indeed, after hearing what Macau said, everyone nodded in unison. Just as Macau said, in their impression, there was no one in the entire guild who could compete with Kildeth except Yen. Yes, although Gildas didn't try his best. Thinking of this, everyone bet together with Macau, betting on Yen. Wakaba had a cigarette holder in his mouth, and his brain was running fast. Not necessarily. Don't forget that there is another monster besides Yen this year. Wakaba looked mysterious. You mean Uru, who was selected as one of the top 10 holy magisters. After listening to Wakaba's words, someone seemed to think of something and preached. Of course not. I'm talking about Egwene's mother. Irene. I don't believe it anymore. No matter how powerful Yen is, can she still beat his mother? So I put all in on Irene. Wakaba has a cigarette holder in his mouth. He will win today, and he will definitely turn the tide. The money he lost to Macau last time, this time he will win back all the money with interest. Hiss. After hearing Wakaba's words, all the wizards of fairy tale gasped. Yes, as Wakaba said, although Yen is a monster, but this year's assessment has a monster's mother. I bet on Irene too. Me too, me too. As soon as everyone counted, another group of people bet on Irene. Then all bet on Erza. Just when everyone thought that this year's S-level magister assessment would be divided between Irene or Yen, a discordant voice came out from among the crowd. This magister seemed to have a vicious vision, so he directly avoided Irene and Yen were left behind, and the baby was bet on Erza. Why? Upon hearing this, the magisters of fairy tale looked at this different and maverick person who chose to bet on Erza in puzzlement, and asked. I bet Egwene is a sister-in-law. I saw the magister gently pushing the myopia on the bridge of his nose, and preaching lightly. Hiss. Hearing the words, everyone gasped again, this person is right. This is too bad. Yen, Erza, and Irene may all pass this year's S-rank magister assessment. It's over, even if I am the god of gamblers, it's hard to bet. A group of fairy tale magisters began to struggle, feeling extremely troubled as to who would pass this year's S-rank magister assessment. Kana, who do you think will pass this year's S-rank magister assessment? Gray and Leon looked at the noisy group of members. To be honest, they couldn't figure out who would pass this year's S-level magister assessment. Although they really wanted to choose Ulu to pass the S-level magister assessment, but right now it seemed impossible. After all, there was that invincible Yen there. That is to say, is there a possibility that many people will pass the assessment this year? Kana looked at the prediction displayed on the card in her hand, and spoke hesitantly. Many people have passed the S-level assessment. Gray and Leon lost their minds when they heard this. Okay. The group of gamblers who had been calculating who would pass the test were all stunned after hearing Gray and Leon's words. I'm just talking casually. Kana put away her divination cards, and waved her hands towards everyone who looked over. Ha ha ha. In the next second, everyone in the guild laughed. Kana, it seems that you are still too young, what you said is impossible. That's right, that's right. In the history of our fairy tale, there has never been a case where multiple people pass the S-level magister assessment together. That's right. In previous year's S-level assessment, either only one person passed, or no one passed. The old people in the guild suddenly burst out laughing. Their experience told them that it is impossible for many people to pass this year's S-rank Magister assessment together. Yes, after all, my predictions may not be accurate. Karna smiled slightly when she heard the loud laughter of the members. Kana thought to herself, in previous years' fairy tale S-level exams, there had never been a monster like Yen competing with a strong man who was awarded the title of Holy 10 Magisters by the Magic Council at the same time. Come on, go on, go on. After a burst of laughter among the old members of the guild, they happily started today's party again. Because the month of the S-level assessment is approaching, they have been busy with missions in order to be selected by the president to participate in the S-level assessment. Now everyone has a lot of spare money in their hands, so they can enjoy the extremely leisurely time in front of them and wait for the end of this year's fairy tale S-rank Magister assessment. Gray. Okay. However, at the moment when everyone was laughing, Leon and Gray looked at each other. We bet that many people will pass the S-rank Magister assessment this year. Leon and Gray, who had already verified Kana's foreknowledge ability, took out their entire savings of 30,000 J and bet that many people would pass the S-level Magister assessment this year. Quote. As Gray and Leon finished speaking, the entire guild was extremely quiet. Real or fake? A group of Magisters who were still fond of drinking looked at Gray and Leon in shock. Okay. Gray and Leon nodded, they believed in Karna. Although we shouldn't take money from children, if you plan to play, let's play with you. A group of older Magisters looked at each other, and they decided to wait until the end of this year's S-level Magister assessment. Winner, give Gray and Leon their money back, they don't take money from kids and fools after all. Oh, Kana looked at the scene in front of her, did a divination casually, and finally got an unexpected result. The wind on the roof will be noisy this year. Kana looked at the result she calculated and muttered to herself. A small gamble is fun, but a big gamble hurts the body. After Kana put away her magic cards, she kept shaking her head. Her previous prediction was correct. Yusheng was neither Egwin nor Ulu, because Yusheng was not a person, but a group of people. Although Kana has the ability of divination, she rarely participates in gambling in the guild, at least for now. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.